Here we go, Thursday night. It's going to be great tonight. Guys, we got an awesome show for everybody. I just want to welcome everybody as everyone kind of trickles in here Thursday night. I don't know if you're living in the Northeast. I mean, listen, I like to put that preface it out there. A lot of storms. I mean, it's like 97 degrees in New York. So there are occasional thunderstorms. Listen, could power go out? You never know. I hope not. Because we got a great show tonight. And I got Elden Ring DLC to play tonight. Okay? There's things to do. So I'm hoping the power works with us. But nonetheless, it is very warm here in New York. Great way to kick off the June, what I like to call Games Fest, which is unbelievable. Not only do we have a great Games Fest with Summer Game Fest, the Xbox Showcase, and Nintendo Direct, Ubisoft, all of them went out there and did their thing. But on top of that, we have this outstanding Elden Ring is kind of taking everything by storm. And we are going to talk about Elden Ring more towards the middle second hour of the show. We've got great Erica joining us tonight. Erica's going to be joining us roughly around the second hour, I believe. Shout out to the great Mag here, guys. You guys know him as the great middle-aged game guy. He says, sorry, I couldn't make it tonight. Have a great show. Mag, listen, Italy lost 1-0 to Spain. My heart is broken. So if that party you're at is not doing what you needed to do to lift your spirits, you come right back on the show. Shout out to the great Mag who's here. Also got a great super chat from Gaming Hero. He says, be back at 6:55 sharp. That was a great super chat from before. Guys, the super chat's working. It's a miracle. Listen, everybody is playing Elden Ring. It is a craze right now. Twitch is blowing up. Steam is blowing up. It's available on PC, not on console yet. It's going to be a fantastic weekend, guys. I'm so excited for this. But that being said, let me do one more little quick promo plug, and then we're going to get to this amazing panel. We are going to be doing twitch.tv, Mooch TV, tomorrow. We're going to be fighting Radon, fighting Moog, and going right into the DLC. I'm going to kind of play around, mess around a little tonight, but I got to be honest with you, we're going to be going into all of that tomorrow. I want to get my level up tonight, kind of mess around a little bit, get ready for this great stream. But tomorrow, I don't have the time. You guys will follow me over on Twitter. It's Mooch TV everywhere. Drop the O's for zeros. M00CHTV. We're going to be doing Twitch all weekend with Elden Ring and the DLC. And follow me over there on X now, what used to be formerly known as Twitter. That being said, let's get to this amazing panel, will you? He's been here for the past, I think, 4 weeks straight. And I got to tell you, personally, having a lot of fun talking games with him. And we don't always see eye to eye, but you know what? That's the best part of CrossFire. That's why I love having him on. The great Death Singer is back on the show. Singer, I don't know. I know it's roughly about 12:05 a.m. in Wales, okay? It is roughly, and you're still alive, kicking, and doing well. You have more energy than I do. Singer, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, It's a good Elden Ring day. Hey, shout out to Steam. Steam has a funny thing where they like to drop stuff early.
Yes, they do.
That's one of the perks. There we go. See? Trying to sell you all on the PC life, as I do. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be back, and there's some great topics, and it's a great panel, so...
Well, listen, I got to be honest with you. We're going to have a great show tonight. You're going to be one of the stars of the show, Singer. And I know that you're doing a great job, but I think it really, more than anything, I don't think it's necessarily just that Steam did great. I think that you have to look at it this way. A lot of the, if you'll say, streamers embrace the PC, right? Like everyone is playing through PC. So, I mean, that in there itself sells this game, sells this DLC, sells a lot of games. So putting it out early there and letting people take a look at it and then purchasing it later, maybe on PC or on console, it's kind of brilliant.
Well, I mean, most of the big streamers have beefed out PCs, right? And if you want the best frame rates, the best graphics, the best everything, you'll be playing it on your beefed up PC. And also... you could just stream straight off your PC, so it's a 2-in-1. You just boot up the software and off you go. So,
well, I completely agree with you. That being said, here, let me go ahead and let me tell you something, a little behind the scenes. I think some people who listen to podcasts like a little behind the scenes. Sometimes you have to have your people reach out to other people. In this case, I'm my own producer, director, and host of the show. I had to reach out to Kami and say, Kami, listen, how do I get you on the show? I know you want to play Elden Ring. And I had to literally bring him to the green room. He wanted the best of the best to drink, the best of the best to eat. I said, Kami, we got everything you want here. He says, Mooch, you got 2 hours. I said, Kami, I'll take it. The great Kami is back with us with all the information that we need to know on a week-to-week basis. You guys got to follow him over on Twitter. If you're not, you're doing yourself an injustice. But Kami, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me. Happy to be back. And yes, I am itching to play the Elden Ring DLC.
Well, that's a given. right? Is that? It's great to have you
Thanks
here.
for dragging me away.
No, listen, buddy, I do what I can. Listen, playing games is number one. Talking games is number two. But unfortunately, I had to reverse them. That's not fair that they went 6 p.m. on me. That's not fair. That's not fair. They said midnight, then they went 6 p.m. And I don't know when they changed that, Kami. Did they change that today?
That literally took me by surprise, too. I had no idea. I thought it was going to be at midnight. I guess just the PC version is early, but apparently PS5 and Xbox people are playing early, too. So, I don't know. It's all over the place, man.
Well, you tell me about it, and I know about it. I'll tell you this much. So, a lot of people, a couple of the folks that were going to be joining us second half are having a bit of a hard time. Hopefully, they can still get here. I was just responding to them in the DMs over on X. So, hopefully, if they're listening, they can make it. They're all at work or doing things, and it's like, they're like trying to get here in traffic. I said, listen, just try to get here. We're going to have an outstanding show. Speaking of that, Eric, I told you this last week, and we really needed you last week. This week here is more of a situation where I think it's a coming to terms finally in the Xbox camp with some of the news that's been released, some of the quotes that are coming out from Matt Booty, some of the other things that are happening throughout the industry. Now we're seeing what's going on with some of the third-party smaller titles. Eric, the voice of reason, it is outstanding to have you back on CrossFire, buddy. How you doing this evening?
Excuse me. I'm doing pretty good. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And yeah, man, it's going to be interesting the next few days, just watching everybody be all over Elden Ring, man.
Well, Eric, when we get to that part of the tonight's show, I have some explicit questions for you with Elden Ring, because I have a feeling I know where you're going to go with this, but I really, really want to hear your take on it. But what's really great about tonight is I get to put Kami on the hot seat. And I know he doesn't like that. But Kami, I got to ask you, right? You're all in the news. You're our news source. I mean, you've absolutely blown up on Twitter. You report the news the second it comes out. You've got links. You provide all this data for us. I know you're up on it. Listen, this is one of the first topics here, and I'll kind of it's just a slow drip here, okay? Xbox marketing chief departs as marketing shakeup inside Microsoft continues. My question for you, Kami, is: do you think that part of this shakeup that's going on in the marketing department, we've seen a few people leaving, is because of Xbox's new, I want to say, their new process, their new path forward, that they really haven't said clearly yet? They are leaking more and more hints as we kind of move down the path from that Xbox podcast back in February. But here we are, we're seeing more and more people. Think about it, Kami. If I said to you, you're running my marketing department, and I say to you, listen, we're not going to be needing that much kind of Xbox press moving forward, the jobs kind of diminish, or there's just not a lot left there. What do you think when it comes down to it, when you hear about some of these folks leaving that are higher up in the Xbox brass? And really what it comes down to in seeing that a few of these third-party developers now, smaller titles right now, are skipping Xbox. Is that because they see the path, they kind of see the writing on the wall that we may not be getting that information from Xbox for a bit now?
I mean, on one hand, there is usually a lot of turnover with these kind of roles and jobs. I mean, people are always moving in and out. But I think last time I was here, I think maybe 3 weeks ago, we did talk about how there seemed to be some sort of internal struggle going on at Xbox between sort of the Phil Spencer side with Sarah Bond and Matt Booty, and then the Microsoft side with Satya and the Microsoft higher ups. So I don't know if I would make a huge deal out of this specific departure, but it does kind of feel like Xbox is kind of in a transition period, I would say. And I think moving forward, we're going to see some changes in their marketing, but I don't know if this specific departure is a huge deal. I think just the overall direction with Xbox is going to be changing over the next maybe year or so.
Well, I think I know where you're going with that, and I do see what you're saying, Eric. When it comes down to it, you hear what Kami's saying. We kind of had our reactions after the big February podcast, but I mean, at this point, you have games like Marvel vs. Capcom. I believe it's called Tomba 2, Fear Effect. Some of these smaller games, some not. So, I mean, I'm not sitting here saying it's a 5-alarm fire, Eric. I'm not saying that at all. But when you look at what Satya said, as Kami said, and then you look at what's going on, and we saw what the CFO has said, and now we see what Matt Booty has said, it's kind of at a point right now where you're at a fork in the road to where you say, I think at this point here, I think Xbox is definitely going to go third party. They even said they're only going to have launch exclusives, and I have the quote here, but I want to hear what you have to say first, Eric.
What did they say about the launch exclusives? I didn't see that part.
So what he says here, so this is Xbox Game Studios, Matt Booty on porting games to PlayStation. He says, we will continue to make those decisions individually on a case-by-case basis. We are absolutely committed to having launch exclusives on Xbox. Let me repeat that again. We are absolutely committed to having launch exclusives on Xbox. It's part of our core promise, and we want to continue to bring our games to more players on more devices going forward. And we certainly got a lot of experience with that, with things that have been historically multi-platform for so long. So you can see he's doing a little bit of that wordsmith again there, where it's like, well, it's going to be launch exclusives on Xbox, but then he's saying, well, games that we've bought that have always been multi-plat, we'll leave multi-plat. They always say it's kind of, it's almost a contradiction. It's like, oh, I see where you're going, and then it's stepped back. You know what I mean from that comment?
Mm-hmm.
I think the key takeaway from that is just the fact that he only said launch exclusives. He did not commit to any other exclusives except for like console launch exclusives. So go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, that's it kind of like falls in line too. I know people were highlighting to the chagrin of some of the Xbox community that they didn't really state exclusive in the showcase. A lot of it was, just completely, of course, as we would expect, pushing Game Pass, saying Game Pass, but none of it said like exclusive to whatever, which again wasn't too surprising if you've been paying attention. Mm-hmm. And I guess that kind of falls in line too with what Phil was kind of saying on the Ryan interview on IGN. And again, the wordsmithing, like you said, we're committed like to our players, which is a funny statement of, you'll be able to purchase or subscribe or whatever, but nothing was set in stone about what's going to be specifically locked into the platform itself, which again goes back further to the business event when it was just 4. And of course, then at that point, Xbox dudes were kind of saying, it's all good, guys. It's only 4. It's only 4. And we're all like, well, it's 4 now, but who knows what, is going to come from that. But to your other question, as far as like kind of what's going on with some of these games skipping the platform, again, not new, not surprising. And I see people who keep going back and forth. And I said, it's either possibly one of two things, and I don't talk too much about it on the timeline because people don't want to have that conversation like in an honest way most of the times anyway. But it seems in some cases we've seen where a game is not coming day one because of optimization issues, as they'll put it, right?
Yep.
So it's not skipping completely, but it's not coming right away. So we keep seeing that happening, and now we're seeing more and more games, small, big, medium, in between, not coming to the platform at all, or again, not coming immediately. And maybe I'm speculating, but let's go back to something that we talked about months ago, Mooch. And I said, you go to the storefronts, and we've always seen indie developers say how hard it is to get your game presented and pushed, and how fast you only have a small window to hit it before you get pushed down the list and something else drops. So now imagine when you also have to compete with a platform's own program in Game Pass. So your visibility is even, more so when you're going to the storefront. Absolutely. And now you have your game sitting there, and now you have, you can play in the Game Pass. And let's be honest, and again, this is something else. Again, some of the fan base gets mad at when you point it out. I have the proof of it. I have like an over 2,000, retweeted tweet saying, "Don't wait for this particular game to hit Game Pass. Go ahead and play it. It's a good game." And people take umbrage with that, but it is a true thing. People will not touch a game unless it's coming to Game Pass.
Eric,
so you have that to compete with.
I'm very happy.
So I think developers.
No, go ahead. Finish that statement.
Oh no, I'll wrap up real quickly by saying I think developers are possibly weighing a lot of that. If they're not going to get the Game Pass bag necessarily, then what is the urgency? Because there has to be something to that, to where people, the numbers would speak for themselves, and no one's going to leave money on the table if there's money to be made. So there is definitely something going on there to where platforms are or the developers are looking at, just not showing up on Xbox at all. I don't know exactly what it is, but that's just my speculation.
So there's been talk of that, and there was a few of the interviews that went on post after the Xbox showcase And you kind of hit on a couple of subjects. I do want to give a quick shout out to the Lord Metroid. He says, hey, Mooch, what about Metroid Prime 4? We're going to talk a little bit about that, Lord Metroid. I thought that looked very, very good. And shout out to PlayStation 5 Sweden, who's back in the family. Appreciate you joining the family again, buddy. Please, guys, right above that outstanding description there, you'll see that join button. That is all those green names out there. Those are our Mooch Maniac family members. Shout out to MASH and Esprit Lotus, too, for all the gifted subs. I got to say, we're at 170-something subs on the month. That's unbelievable, and I can't say thank you enough to those two guys, as well as Detective Seeds, who couldn't make it tonight. And hopefully BRAP can second hour. We'll see. Seeds will be back next week. But, Eric just kind of set me up perfectly. That's why I have him on the show. He's just a professional. He knows what he's doing here. Eric, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and ask Singer. Singer, I got news for you. Eric kind of put the volleyball up there. I'm going to spike it. When it comes down to it, is this, in fact, a situation of Game Pass being the problem? And I know a lot of people don't like to hear it. They don't like to hear it because they think it's the best value in gaming. And for those folks that are enjoying it, I think it is. I also think value's in the eye of the beholder. So, Singer, when it comes down to it, if you're a small indie game, right, and you only have maybe 50 employees or less, you've seen some of them saying now, they've been through interviews saying that basically it's not, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, because if I don't have a Game Pass deal in place with Xbox, putting it on their console doesn't sell, because their consumers have been trained to basically say we're gonna wait for Game Pass. So, in a sense, has that really kind of come back to bite Xbox? Or you go, no, you know what? This was probably something they knew, and they were ready to move on and go third party anyway, so it doesn't really matter. What do you think about that, Sarah? Because, Eric made some really good points right there.
There's multiple points to hit it from, and it depends, what the deal is, because Xbox could have approached them and said, we want to make this a Game Pass deal, and the developer, or whoever, on the other end is like, yeah, but we want to actually sell it. We don't really want to take a deal if it's a game. In the case of the Marvel Capcom fighting games, they probably sat there and crunched the math and was like, okay, so we know this is going to sell, and it's going to sell well. We probably already ran the numbers in the boardroom, whatever. And they're like, so we're not going to put it on Xbox Game Pass.
Right.
And then it's like, how much would it actually sell? If it doesn't sell enough, then you may as well just skip it, because you're not going to make the money back. But then if they're not interested in a Game Pass deal,
right,
if they turn down a Game Pass deal because they're like, well, no, we can make more money. Because obviously a Game Pass deal is a give and take, as one of the developers said before. Microsoft crunches numbers, and then they come up with a number, and then they offer you that bag of money, because that's what they think it's going to sell on their platform. But you might sell more, you might sell less, so you could lose out, or you could gain big. So it's a risk situation. So I understand why some people want to skip, because if they don't want to take the risk, it's like, okay, cool, wash our hands of it. But then you look at something like that hypercharged Unbox game. In Game Pass, got a deal, doing really, really well on Xbox. And so it depends. You have two sides of the coin.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Will Xbox going third party eventually? That whole launch exclusive thing ties into what I thought, which is what I said last week.
Well, so,
I think it's good.
Go ahead, Singer. No, please go ahead.
I was going to say it's a year. I think it'll be a year on the big games. So you launch it in the year, and then the following year you could release it on PlayStation or whatever.
Yeah,
then it's a launch exclusive, so it's exclusive for a year, and then you just ship it.
So let me say this, Singer. I want to say something here, because what you just said is dead on accurate. And anybody in the chat that's listening right now or listening later, I said this years ago when it came to Game Pass and how they were originally going to do PC. I said before Xbox in 2016 said they were going to bring their games to PC day one, they should have held the games on Xbox. I even said 6 months, right, to be aggressive. I actually think that Singer's right. But I want to say with a year, his idea and his proclamation of a year. Okay, fine. I think 6 months. They could have waited 6 months and then put their games on PC and Game Pass and gave a reason for the console to kind of exist. You could even have done Game Pass day and date. But the PC thing, they probably should have waited. Now, the thing is you just said it yourself, and you're a PC guy. You're like, in order for it to make sense for Game Pass subscribers, they need to at least know they have that year where they're paying, it's on their console, it's not going to go anywhere else, and if you want to play an Xbox game, you have to play it the first year on Xbox. right? And I mean, that means something. It means something. It's the same thing I said when they were going day and date many, many years ago. I said, now that sounds awful now, right? But it's not. Back then, there was no Xbox games or PlayStation games going day one to PC back then. Now you have PlayStation games are going to PC that are live service, right? And then you have Xbox. All of Xbox's entire portfolio goes to Steam day one. So it is what it is. But, that's, Kami, I want to kind of go to you on this. This is something that now I think a lot of people are saying, that wouldn't have been a bad idea. I would have liked to have had my Xbox have the privileges to those games for 6 months to a year before they went to PC or any other, platform. And I think Singer said it best.
Yeah, I mean, times have definitely changed in a very short amount of time. I mean, now it's like we're disappointed if a game isn't on PC day one, or some people are disappointed or they expect it to be day one on PC, especially for like the live service games.
That's wild, Kami.
Yeah, in like 3 or 4 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's definitely becoming a trend as far as the publishers just straight out skipping Xbox.
Yeah.
It started with some indie games, and now it's even gone to AAA publishers like Capcom. Because Marvel vs. Capcom, that is published by Capcom, I believe. And even they are skipping Xbox now. So it's definitely becoming a trend. I don't know how concerning it is for Xbox. I would be concerned personally. I did see an interview, I believe, from SkillUp, and I think someone on his team talked to a bunch of different developers and asked them, why are you guys not developing on Xbox, or why are you guys skipping Xbox? And basically it came down to what you were saying. Xbox players have been conditioned, basically, to expect their games to be on Game Pass.
Yep.
And I think that's true. I mean, me personally, like, Hellblade 2, would I have bought that if it wasn't on Game Pass? I don't know. At this point, I just expect these games to be on Game Pass day one. And it's not just first party, even smaller indie games. Like, if it's not on Game Pass day one, it's almost like I'm less interested in it. So it makes sense. I don't know what Xbox can really do at this point, but I do think that this Game Pass day one thing is kind of backfiring on them a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a Kami's point. Go on.
No. Go ahead, Death Singer.
I was going to say, the Capcom thing is weird, because if we take them as a base example, right, you have that Kunitsu Path of the Goddess, right? That's Capcom, launching in Game Pass day one this year. But then you have the Marvel game skipping, but then you have Monster Hunter coming. And all of these Capcom games, so it's like, I don't know, there has to be a reasoning, because it's not like all games are skipping. They're big games like Monster Hunter, etc. are coming, and they're like newer IPs, like this Kunitsu game. They probably like, okay, we could get a Game Pass deal. But then the fighting games skip, and is it because they just believe there are not that many fighting game fans on Xbox? Like, fighting games don't sell well, so it's not worth it, because Evo, everything's done on PlayStation. Nintendo has a huge fighting game market. PC is big into fighting games, so maybe that's.
I wonder if
that could be it, possibly. Yeah.
I wonder if it's just them testing the waters, just to kind of see. Okay, we'll put all these other games on Xbox, but we'll keep this one, Marvel vs. Capcom. We'll see how it does without Xbox, and then if it's not a huge loss, maybe we'll do it more. That's kind of what it seems like to me. I don't know.
That's interesting. That's kind of like that's like Superman 2 rules. That's kind of reversed. I like that comment. That's actually the developer trying something out. When we keep saying, "Well, Xbox is trying things out. They're going to see if it works." Well, now maybe the developers are kind of saying, "Here's the same medicine on the other side. Let me not put it there and see just how much we're affected by the bottom line." Then again, do you ever really know that variable if you don't put it there? That's the question when you remove it from versus where Xbox is adding to. Go ahead, Eric.
No, I was going to say, I don't know if you remember, or correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a report some time ago that said that that basically some of those big money deals, some of those deals in general on Game Pass were drying up? That
I do remember that
they weren't being offered as much. So I mean,
I think
if
that's
that is
specifically
the
for
case,
indies.
Yes.
yeah,
Smaller
so
titles,
so that kind of tracks with what we were saying a few moments ago. Some of the devs saying, yeah, it's not really worth the risk for us being smaller. But yeah,
What?
the Capcom thing is interesting. So Singer, you bring up a good point there. It could just be, I don't know, maybe there's a correlation. Maybe they look at something like the Street Fighter numbers and said, I don't know.
Guys,
is it
well, remind me of something. Singer, remind me of something real quick. And I'm throwing this out there, and Singer, you can take the mic after this. But what was the last big game that came out third party day and date on Game Pass? I remember Outriders, right? What was there anything else besides? I mean, I know that people are going to say MLB The Show, but that's become more of just a consistent one now. If you want to count that, that's fine. But what else has come out day one? I know like Dead Island 2, for example, but that went into Game Pass 6-7 months after launch, if not longer. So it wasn't that. My point being is it's not sustainable, and we know that from Xbox now because they haven't done it for a long time. They went and spent $100 billion, folks. They spent $100 billion, so they're not. They're which they should, by the way. They're relying on their internal teams. They're not going to go out there and grab. I'm just trying to think of any game that comes out there that happens to be. I'm trying to think of a like Assassin's Creed, right? They're not going to grab the new Assassin's Creed and throw that in Game Pass. That's not cost effective for them right now, and that's not going to move the needle.
No, and it wouldn't skip the platform. And as someone pointed out in the chat, the Persona fighting games skipped Xbox as well. Now all the Persona 4 came, Persona 5 came. Persona 3 came.
Yep.
Persona 3 came day and date.
Yep.
Day one. Like, Atlas is really loving it. But the fighting games skipped Xbox. So maybe it is a fighting games thing. It is just a fighting games thing. Where this genre in particular does not do well on Xbox at all. So just don't bother. Give them Street Fighter and Tekken. And that's basically what you're going to get at that point.
Shout out to
that makes sense.
Shout out to PC Hawk in the chat. He says there are almost 60 million Xbox One consoles out there. Capcom could have made a profit. And you know what, PC Hawk, I'm not actually going to disagree with you, but the logic you're using is pre 2017 Xbox. That's the difference. Because post 2017, and the reason 2017 comes to mind, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, please do check. I believe that's when Game Pass was announced. So once Game Pass was announced, it's not that Xbox One consumers wouldn't buy the Capcom game, but they're right now they're just basically they've been right. I mean, guys, what's the word that you use? Basically, Xbox is legitimately like trained everyone that's be like, no, just Game Pass, everything Game Pass. Even you can see what we're watching right now from the Xbox Showcase, whether it's their first party or some third party, it had to have been on Game Pass. If it didn't say on Game Pass, they're like, Singer, I was actually talking to you about it last week, I believe, and I know shout out to Crusader, I don't know if he's listening to the show later, but he was really excited about Dragon's Age. And somebody on the show, when we were doing the play-by-play on the live show, somebody said, hey, is that going to be day and date on Game Pass? And they were like, no. And they're like, oh, okay, never mind, next game. And it's like, that's the thing, they've kind of almost just kind of brainwashed everybody into it's either Game Pass or don't buy it. And I think a lot of the bigger AAA games, they're still going to put their games on Xbox. No doubt about it. Absolutely. But the smaller indies now, Singer, I think that's where the problem lies. And you may say it doesn't matter, but as that number of smaller games continues to pile up on the Nintendo, the PC, and PlayStation, and Xbox is excluded, you are slowly kind of making your way out of that big three platform, and you're really going to lose your place.
The thing with the indie is, Steam is the king of, I'd say, the king of indies, right? Because they get thousands of games released every day, right? There are tons of fantastic indie games. But then Nintendo, obviously, they don't have as much third party as either PlayStation or Xbox. So Nintendo's first party churns out a whole bunch. You get the occasional third party game, and normally that's like cloud streaming or whatever, because you can't have it native. And then you have a whole bunch of like indie games because all of this sells. PlayStation, I mean, they have a lot of third-party deals and whatnot, so they're probably not really interested right now in a lot of them. So as an indie developer, you're probably looking at Nintendo and Steam for like, where would I find an audience? Because you could find Game Pass. But the problem is now, I think Xbox, that's why they own so many studios, is they're going to flood Game Pass with their own first-party titles, right? They got so many studios, so many games in development, popping in every couple of months. There'll be a brand new big game dropped in or a smaller game. So maybe indies will still love game because they could probably get the Game Pass back because they still have ID at Xbox and they're developing however many games, so that could still be a thing. So I think they're really strong with the indie right now because of that. So I don't think indies are really gonna skip that much. I'd say it's more the niche games that don't sell well. So we're thinking like JRPGs, some of like the Trails games, for example, the Trail series. Like I wouldn't expect to see that on Xbox because that's mainly PlayStation will buy that, Nintendo and PC. So I think it's more the niche JRPGs. Atlas seems to have a deal, or Sega has a deal with Xbox of some sort for Game Pass because every game seems to be coming to Game Pass. So I don't know. It's an interesting situation.
I think the problem for indies becomes, is it worth spending the money and resources to make an Xbox port unless we have that guaranteed bag for day one Game Pass? And if we don't have that, are we really going to sell enough on Xbox to make it worth it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Because that's the Hypercharge game. It released on PC. It was only on PC. And then they got the Game Pass deal. They said they wanted to work on getting an Xbox. They worked out a Game Pass deal. And now they're reaping in, like, they're absolutely loving how much they're doing on Xbox because of Game Pass and whatnot, and people just buying it. So I think if you could secure the Game Pass back as an indie, it's totally worth it to go there. Otherwise, you're probably just better. If you can only release on one platform, they'd probably pick Steam, I would imagine, because that's the most likely place you'll find an audience. Because as that one developer said about how hard it is to get on PlayStation's front store on the front of it, how hard it is to actually get your game there. So, I mean, either Nintendo, Steam, and Xbox seems to be probably if you could get Game Pass back.
I think it does. Some of it does come down to the quality of the game as well. A game going to Steam doesn't necessarily mean it's instant success.
Yeah, it's just easier to
yes,
because Steam will let basically anything on their storefront. Like there are some wild games on there.
Well, so this is interesting right here. Jay Hart, thank you so much for the super chat, guys. I really do appreciate the super chats. He says, there have been multiple times I bought a game and then it was announced the Game Pass a couple months later. It's training people to wait. So, that's kind of what it comes down to. And I don't know. Listen.
Great point.
Right? So now, Bakami, listen, let's use Elden Ring since it's Elden Ring weekend. Okay? If I said to you, Kami, do me a favor. You know what? I decided, forget it. We're going to do CrossFire for 5 hours tonight. You don't need to play that. Just wait for the Elden Ring DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree. That'll be on Game Pass in 6 months. Just wait it out. Kami, and I use that as an example because it's the hot thing that everyone's talking about right now. Everyone can't wait to play it. Kami, I'm telling you it's going to come to Game Pass in 6 months. Just wait. Myself personally, okay, I know that everyone listening loves all the gaming news. That's why they're here. They're listening later, and I appreciate that. I know everybody on this panel has their ear to the ground, knows the news, knows the games they can't wait to play. Personally, Kami, don't get me wrong. I'm a mooch. I would love to have it for free. Really would. Everybody would. There's no way around it, right? But I also don't mind paying the price for admission because it works, right? I give them the money, I get the game. I get the service for that money. It is great. It's a great handoff. I get to play the game when it comes out. Everyone talks about it the first 2-3 weeks. You said it yourself. Me and Kami were talking behind the scenes. And he's like, Mooch, this is going to be a great weekend. It's just going to be people streaming Elden Ring, talking Elden Ring. And if you're in that community, or even if you want to enter that community, there's no better time than now. Kami, I don't want to wait 6 months, a year, 3 months. I'll just pay. I'm going to pay the DLC price, or I'll pay the new game price, and I'm going to play that game. And I think that they're trying to institute that waiting, and that waiting isn't. I don't think it worked out the way they wanted it to, Kami. And you're seeing it now, and that's been a detriment to them, especially with this $100 billion purchase.
Yeah, I would say for games like Elden Ring, where you know that it's going to be quality, absolutely buy that day one. I think the problem becomes for those games that you're maybe sort of interested in, but you're not really all the way ready to buy it day one. Those are the kind of games that people are waiting for to come to Game Pass. and that's just resulting in less sales on Xbox. And now we're seeing the result of that, which is now more and more developers are starting to skip the platform or delay their game, 6 months, like we saw with Black Myth Wukong.
Yep.
And I do think that is because people have learned to try and wait for it to come to Game Pass. And it's happened many times. I mean, all the EA games are coming to Game Pass within like a year. All sorts of like AAA games are coming within probably 6 months to a year. So if it's one of those like super anticipated games like Elden Ring, absolutely, people are going to buy those regardless. But those sort of in the middle games that you're kind of interested in, maybe you want to buy it, but you're not 100% sure.
Yeah.
It's becoming a waiting game at this point, and I don't think that's what Xbox wanted.
So, Kami, you made a point there to say you brought up Black Myth Wulong, and also Baldur's Gate 3, I think, ran into a similar situation. I don't know if they're calling it optimization or what issues they were running into. But we didn't get a chance to talk about it a lot last week, and I have it written down here because I wanted to bring it up if the topic came up. It's a rumor. It's nothing here is true, but with all the discussion, Kami, of possibly a handheld and these other things coming to Xbox as far as new hardware, there was a rumor that one of the series consoles, and of course I would, it's funny, you immediately think the S may get discontinued, right? But there's more S's than X's out there. So, which customer are they actually hurting more in that case? I don't even know if they could do something like that. But Tommy, do you think that this has kind of been a double-edged sword for them, and it hurts them on both sides? You've got consumers waiting 6 months, 12 months until Game Pass gets it, and they don't buy the game, which the third-party developers and publishers are noticing. And then you have Baldur's Gate 3, Black Myth Wulong saying, optimization problems for the Xbox. And that's a lot of people will stipulate and say that that's because of the Xbox Series S. A lot of people say, no, it's not. Well, it's something, right? I mean, they're making the damn game for every other platform except Xbox, and Xbox has 2 SKUs. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong. I have no problem with that. I just, do you think that we would see Xbox when a handheld in fact does come out, that you'll see the Series S or one of the series consoles be discontinued?
That's an interesting question. Does someone else want to go?
Eric, go ahead, or Singer.
Oh yeah. I think the Series S. Oh, go on, Eric. Actually, yeah, you go.
No, Singer, go ahead. Thing.
I think it'd be the Series S that goes, because you could probably make a handheld just as powerful with technology now, the way it is. I think of something along the lines of the Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck could play a whole bunch of the games on the go and whatnot. Plus, they also have, if it doesn't quite work, they could utilize their xCloud service. Like, they have ways and bouts of going it, but I think that would be their way, because I think the Series S has tripped them up. Because for Baldur's Gate 3, because they couldn't get the co-op to work properly, that's why it was delayed. And they're trying to find ways around it. And I think the Series S is causing them more problems than it's probably worth. So like, okay, well, if we could just make a powerful handheld, get rid of the Series S, that also stops a lot of confusion. Which series console do I want to get? So you either buy the X or you buy the handheld. They're your 2 options. And it makes sense. You probably want to get in the handheld gaming market now because it's big. Like, look how well the Switch is doing. The Steam Deck's selling really, really well for Steam. So you probably want to get a hand in that anyway. So I would say it's be the Series S console that you get rid of. I don't think you get rid of it until the end of the gen, though. So I think you release the handheld, then you slowly phase out the Series S. You just
Correct.
Slowly, like maybe you stop the factories, or instead of having 10 lines making Series S's, you only have 5 making Series S's, and the other 5 are to the handheld.
See, I agree with you.
You slowly transition just to get people in the door, because more people will probably mess with a handheld than they would a Series S.
Yeah, first of all, I completely agree. And you actually put it in better terms than I was going to, Death I was going to say you really can't discontinue anything until you introduce something else that would be a replacement. And that replacement would be the handheld, the rumor anyways, the things we've read about it. Is it even true? Is it happening? We don't know. Eric, you did want to comment on this. What did you think?
No, Singer kind of hit it on the head. But I'll just add to saying if they are going into the handheld area in particular, I would definitely think the S will probably be the one to be taken out, because dudes are a little bit out there if they think they're going to get like a handheld that's like ridiculously powerful, for a certain price and everything else. It's like it needs to be, like Singer was saying, somewhere probably around what the Steam Deck is doing, somewhere between that or the ROG or whatever, because who are you actually making it for will be the question, because you made the S to try to hit like a lower tier market. And I've always kind of felt the S was created to compete with the Switch at a price point level, to try to get some of that market, not the handheld market, but the price point.
The price point, yes.
So if you're going to jump back in and try to do some super elite powerful, because I hear dudes saying, oh, it could side load, it could do all this stuff. You've already lost like the average gaming consumer if they have to go in. If you start talking side loading and doing all this crazy stuff to get to where you really want to be, that's already done.
Right.
It has to be a simple use case, and literally their best bet is to make a handheld, like you said, is a little more powerful than the S, kind of hits that price point the right way, but needs to be native to like Game Pass and out of the box, no issues. Log in, there's all your stuff.
So
anything outside of that, they're already going to be shooting themselves in the foot. So hopefully they're not listening to a lot of the hardcore base who want to have the list war and all this other stuff because they want to be able to load PlayStation Plus on it and do all this other. You're not going to. That's not who they need to be talking to, honestly. Because then once again, Mooch, we've seen it for years and years and years. They always address what the base wants, which is why I said years ago. I said you wasted a whole lot of time dealing with power, because that's what you thought the base wanted to hear, and you didn't want to lose out to Sony on a 1080p, whatever. And I was like, your focus should have been games from the beginning, not acquiring after you address power, and now you've backed off power.
Yes, you
the minute you introduced the S to the, so you lost all that time. So stop losing the time and kind of figure out who you're trying to talk to.
Right, exactly. So exactly. You've preached for the past how many years now on power and this and that. Now you're stepping off from that and you're saying portability, accessibility, and Eric. Again, these guys are amazing. These guys are legitimately segueing subject to subject. But Singer, I got to ask you what Eric just said. So you have a handheld hypothetically in the future, right? You have a situation where the rumor is also that maybe Steam appears on it. And I know you're probably one of the biggest fans I know of Steam, so you hear me say that and you're like, oh, that's great. But here's my question. Is it great? Because at the end of the day, there's 3 or 4 handheld devices right now that I could play my Game Pass games on, Steam, Blizzard, anything on the go. To say that Xbox wants to make one and throw themselves into that circuit, I'm not saying they would do awful at it, but I'm not excited. I already can play Steam games on the go on devices that I own, and I have a PC that can play Steam games, which, Singer, we spoke behind the scenes multiple times now, and I've even said to you, one of the reasons is I do so much work in the office at a desk. I usually like to have the couch and TV and enjoy console gaming that way, but like... Who? If you already enjoy playing, you said yourself, I'd rather play on a monitor. So you're not going to want to go pick up a handheld when you already have access to Steam.
The thing is, like the competition in the handheld market, what they could do is they could base it on Windows, because the Steam Deck, as good as it is based on Linux, right? If you want to play Game Pass on it, you have to install Windows, right? So now you have to go through a whole process to get Windows on it in order to play Game Pass, because it's like an Xbox dashboard, essentially, and you could just operate it as a mobile Xbox, plus it's officially branded. And I would argue that it would be successful. It'd at least sell more. I reckon it'd sell more handhelds than consoles in Asia, specifically. Because handhelds are massive over in Asia right now. Japan, Nintendo territory. Forget anything else. Nothing rules in there apart from Nintendo. Then you have China. China's big into the PC space, but demand for handhelds has skyrocketed. So if your console ain't doing nothing in Asia, so go and meet the market where they want a handheld, and you probably will do better. Just because of the fact it's a handheld. So I think it would do fine. They don't really have to worry about the ROG Ally, because it's not Xbox branded, it's a ROG Ally. Like, if you put a handheld next to each other, I know Xbox. Xbox is a recognizable brand. Asus isn't really... If you had a poll, what do you know more, Asus or Xbox? Xbox would win, because Asus really just makes PC parts, right? If you're in the PC space, you know Asus, right? I got an Asus monitor. So it's that kind of thing. So I think they could carve a nice niche. Plus Steam, yeah, you could have some Steam integration, but I don't think they would probably do that because Steam have their own handheld, so they'd probably just chill on the side.
Now, if I can just, I want to introduce the wise old gamer. Wise will be right with you. I just want to make a point that Singer had just said a second ago. And Singer, while you were saying that, I'm nodding my head. I'm like, I agree with him. I'm like, Singer's making some really, really good points here, right? Get into the Asian market and have portable accessibility, blah, 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 bring Game Pass to that. But like Eric Jackson said about 10 minutes ago, they were trying to get in. We had this conversation before we were talking about portability. They were trying to get, which what Nintendo does with cost efficient and portability. They were like, oh, the Series S is genius. It's genius because it's exactly what everyone says. The Wii U's $299. Now there's a next-gen console that's $299. It's absolutely remarkable. It's what you want. If you want more power, you get the X. You don't want more, you save your money, you get an S. Right? Now you're saying the same thing, but you went from a compact, small console to a compact, small carry-on. My point is when it comes down to it, if the games they make are everywhere, and this is the path they're going, and there's already competitors out there. Wait, and this is going to make you smile, Singer. Okay, make you smile from New York to Wales. When the Steam Deck 2 comes out, you're going to be in heaven, and I already know you will be.
Yeah, of course.
So the Steam Deck 2 will that'll probably be stronger than what Xbox comes out with, and probably have better accessibility across the Steam platform and all the things that it can do. It's already an amazing device. I think the Steam Deck's one of the best handhelds out there. If someone said to me, Mooch, which one should I get? There's other ones like the Asus ROG Ally, which is much more powerful. It's much more powerful. But I think the Steam Deck overall is just an incredible device. But that's me. That's just my opinion. Wise, you're coming in at the right time. Wise goes, I got to get on CrossFire. I said, no better time than the present, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me on.
Always a privilege to have you on, buddy. Wise. So one thing that we were talking about was basically, of course, before we get into the games and some of the other topics that we got going on, was the more third-party developers choosing to skip the Xbox platform. And basically, the layup question was Game Pass to blame? And then we've kind of metamorphosized into the conversation from there. It started there, and we've kind of moved on. But what do you think, Wise? You've seen all this happening right in front of you on Twitter.
Well, here's the thing, right? I want to just pivot off of what he was just saying. I forgot his name. I've never streamed with you before, so I apologize. But he was saying some points that that I've been saying on my podcast for months now. Mm-hmm. Xbox, the price wasn't the problem, right? For the Series S, the price wasn't the issue, but the problem was basically the ability. Well, basically it tethered you, right? It tethered you into in front of your TV screen. Now, that was my biggest hurdle when I was looking at the S versus the X. Am I much of an Xbox player? Mm-hmm. Full disclosure, no. I have all three consoles, but that's right. It goes in order of me, Nintendo, then PlayStation, then Xbox. I mean, I've been an NES kid since 1985, 84 or something like that, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, that's just how I play, okay? And the problem I had with the S was that, okay, the price was good, but it just tethered me. And if I'm going to do a low power option, then I do want that portability. And I think Nintendo has always, so the problem is that Nintendo wasn't looking for that same strategy where you're going to tether yourself to a box, to a TV, because that would sort of make them fight the same grounds that Xbox and PlayStation are fighting on. And they didn't want to do that. The more power crown only has diminishing returns. Mm-hmm. They've always wanted a way of bridging both of their handheld and console market, because back in the day with the DS and the Wii U, they were developing for two separate consoles essentially, right? So they saw that, hey, yeah, we're a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And they got some games on the DS, some games on the home console. But Nintendo has always been known as the portable. Ever since the whole Pokemon thing, portability, they've ran away with that portable crown. So they've always looked for a way of bringing both of those things together. Mm-hmm. So they had it with the Wii U, but they were almost there. Like with the Wii U, you had the tablet, you had the TV console, and then you could turn off the TV and still play it on your tablet. this was the logical next step in that. Now, obviously, since the Wii U was a resounding failure, we all know that Nintendo was like, well, we don't know if this thing is going to really take off, right? So they were not looking into buying a custom CPU/GPU from NVIDIA and all the prices they entailed. They probably just went to NVIDIA and AMD and said, hey, what can you give us for the low? And NVIDIA said, well, we got a whole lot of crap here that's not selling with a device that never worked for us. Can you do anything with it? And Nintendo was like, yeah, let's run with it and let's see what happens. And of course, it was more of a proof of concept, and it worked. And it worked phenomenally well.
Right.
That is what sort of pushed everybody in. Now, with Xbox going this way, I have this. The big thing that I think the big advantage Xbox will have is the price, right? Now, if Xbox comes into it, the portable market, and if you can play games, every game that is in their Game Pass catalog, how much would that thing cost? You're looking at that chip is going to be somewhere sitting around $399 to $400 if the price of the current market has anything to bear with it. If you have to play Hellblade 2, if you have to play games like everything that's on Game Pass to at least a 30 FPS state, that chip is going to cost somewhere around that price, right? You would assume. So Xbox can subsidize that price. They can say, okay, well, yeah, we could take $100 hit for this console or this portable console just to get it in there. Whereas, and that was a dilemma that I was having with my panelists. I was like, okay, well, what would make me as a gamer buy the Xbox handheld where I'm sort of tethered to only Xbox games, as opposed to, say, a ROG Ally or an Ally X or a Steam Deck where I can play them all, right? And for greater or lesser extent, play everything I want. And it's the same problem that you're going to have with the PlayStation. If the rumors of the PS Vita 2, whatever you want to call it, comes into fruition, right?
Yes.
So and it's going to be that. That's going to be that's going to be their ace card. They're going to say, okay, well, we can subsidize it because we know that if they're buying our platform, they're going to buy games on our platforms. Therefore, it's the same model as they do with the Series X and all of that other stuff. So that all being said, I think that that's going to be the biggest thing. You're going to have your Xbox and your PlayStation handheld, which is going to be somewhere about $299. And then you're going to have your Ally X, your Steam Deck 2s, whatever you want to call it, which is going to be more. Even Steam Deck might be a little bit cheaper because they know that Valve knows that you're going to buy Steam games on the Steam Deck.
Correct.
But
if I could, and I loved the examples you gave, Wise. I mean, one of the things you said though, if we do, these are all rumors, by the way, folks. This is nothing's confirmed by PlayStation for that PS Vita 2 conversation we're about to have, or the Xbox handheld. It's all rumor. But going down this line real quick, if there is a PS Vita 2, whatever they want to call it, right? It's able to play games of of at least PS4. They said capabilities. And Xbox is going this route where you see games are coming to, like Doom is coming to PlayStation. Probably good chance, and eventually Starfield will probably come, as well as Hellblade 2, because Hellblade 2 didn't do very well on Steam or on Xbox as far as sales, and I don't believe it drove the needle very high on Game Pass subscriptions. If you have a Vita 2, that will also be able to probably play a game that you bought from Xbox on there on the go natively. So, I mean, when it comes down to it, my point isn't everything you said is actually gospel, makes a lot of sense. And so did Death Singer, made some great points. But it just seems like it's such redundancy when you're going to have the Asus ROG Ally X coming out. You're going to have Steam Deck 2. There's the other... I don't remember what in the world is the other one there. Everyone always reminds me it's
the Lenovo Legion Go or something like that.
Yes, that one. They're going to have a successor. So that market, I wouldn't use I used the word saturated before. I don't think it's necessarily saturated. Boss goes Mooch port, but nobody. I don't really care. I got Series X's in here. I can do whatever I want. Whether I can play on Steam, I can play on PlayStation. It doesn't matter. It's not that at all. It's a matter that they are bringing those games to the consoles, and it's because people are not buying them on Xbox. I know a lot of the hardcore Xbox guys they don't like hearing that. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. It's not anyone's fault. It's Xbox really wanted you to wait for Game Pass, and that's how they emphasize this generation. But
Xbox is a software platform. That's what people don't seem to understand.
That's right.
Xbox is owned by Microsoft. As much as Xbox is not Microsoft. Xbox is still Microsoft. Okay,
That's correct.
Just like saying Office is not Microsoft. Well, Office is still Microsoft.
It's Microsoft.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's still Microsoft.
Yeah.
I mean, who writes at the end of the day when they sign the dotted line, they sign that check, it says on the top of the check, Microsoft. Okay, so they're going to be beholden to that. Xbox probably looked at it. Satya looked at it and said, "Look, let's see what's working for us. What's working for us is our stuff is being accessed anywhere.
Right.
So, do you want to do Office on a Mac? Sure, go for it. You want to do Office on a Windows computer? Go for it. You want to do Office on Linux? Go for it. You want to buy a Surface just to do our Windows and Office? Go for it. You want to buy a Dell to do it instead? Go for it. You know, just use fucking Office. We don't care. Sorry about the cursing, but yeah, there you go. All right. We have a little bit more relaxed tone.
Hey, Mooch.
Go ahead,
Here's
Sawyer,
the
yes.
thing with the handheld market.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're not comparing apples for apples because as good as the Steam Deck is,
Yes.
fundamentally it doesn't have Game Pass natively. And even to get Game Pass, you have to install Windows.
Singer, can I ask you a question? Singer, can I ask you a question though? Wouldn't you say if you're coming to a table to do a deal, everyone's assuming it's a one-way street. Everyone's like, all the new Xboxes are going to have Steam on there. Well, wouldn't you think Steam would go, yeah, we'll do that. We want the Game Pass app natively on our Steam Deck too.
They could do that.
Of course. I mean, what would Steam be like? No, go ahead, just take our shit. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
See, that's the thing. But I don't think that's an anytime soon thing because you have to. Because how will PlayStation? Because if you can access your Steam library on the handheld, how will PlayStation feel about you playing God of War on your Xbox handheld? PlayStation are real sticklers for that.
Yeah.
So Steam has a lot of hurdles and hoops to jump through because everything's coming to Steam. So saying, yeah, you can have access to your Steam library, but you can't have access to any of your PlayStation games, for example. And that's a thing. See, they don't mind with Steam Deck because it's Steam. It's not a Microsoft handheld. So
Right.
there's a lot of things you have to get through to get there. And
Do you think that's going to happen? Like, I can play my PlayStation games on my Surface Pro, right? I mean, I don't have a Surface Pro, but like in theory, wherever you have Steam, you can play any of the games that are available on Steam. So when you're saying that, okay, PlayStation's going to say, all right, we released Horizon on Steam, but only these devices are allowed to download the game. I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that is.
I wouldn't put it past PlayStation to do something like that.
I mean, it's a PlayStation move, but I don't think that would work because, like, right now, I can play Horizon on, and I'm just saying Horizon. I'm just making an example here.
Right.
What is stopping me from playing Horizon on my Microsoft Surface? Not a darn thing, but it's
right.
I think because it's nothing to do with Xbox. That's just a Windows platform, right? And this is where the hoops and hurdles come in. But also, another big problem with the Steam Deck is it's not in your shops. It's not in your Walmarts. It's not in your Costco's. It's not in your whatever have you. You have to buy it online. You have to buy it from Steam. Now, Xbox could put their handhelds in all these stores. And sure, the Lenovo, on the PowerPoint, because it's not even announced yet, they have the opportunity to make it as powerful as the second Steam Deck. So that option is there. They can finagle it. And then, yeah, sure, you have the Lenovo and the Asus, but as I said, it's like, if you want recognizable to just the casual gamer, Xbox is something they know about. So it exists. If I put a Lenovo in front of them, they're going to be like, what company is this? For the most part, because you don't have a Lenovo TV. You probably have a Lenovo laptop, maybe. You might have some Lenovo PC PC things. I don't know, but like it's just not a household name in the general gaming market, only in really PC market. So I think there is a much overlap between them. So I think Xbox can carve themselves a nice path. Naturally, you're not going to compete with Nintendo. Nintendo will destroy everyone who steps in there. So you're not fighting them. But you could carve your own niche. And with the way Asia is now, like, China and South Korea. They're massive on PC. They're big on handhelds now. Not so much consoles. So that's where I think they'll make the biggest bang with the handheld. So it's a great option. I don't think it's redundant because if they have that launch exclusive thing I was talking about earlier, the 1 year, okay, you have the 1 year. But if it's 1 year exclusive to this, then it comes to your PlayStation handheld. You now have to make the choice, which you do now, which everyone's been making for the past couple of years. Do I wait for it to come to another platform, or do I buy it day one? Because I'm hyped for it.
So, and that kind of brings me to the next subject there, because I think that a lot of these tie in. And, you know, Kami, I'll go to you on this here, because I think the guys bring up a good, again, outstanding by Death Singer to go right into this. One of the things I said after the Xbox showcase was I thought it was a great showcase. I mean, there's no way around it. You can't say it wasn't a great showcase. It was a very good showcase. And now we're going to find out that Xbox will be returning to Gamescom this August with its biggest booth ever. And what I always ask is kind of this new Xbox versus old Xbox. And what I mean by that is when I watched the Xbox showcase this year, I looked at it and I was like, damn, a lot of those games I can't wait to play. That's going to be a lot of fun. But then I stopped and I was like, well, probably pick them up on Steam. Maybe I'll play them. I'll buy them on Xbox or I'll buy it on PS5, right? It was almost like watching an Ubisoft show or watching an EA show. It was like, wow, that was a great show by Xbox. But it didn't hold like the weight of like when Xbox was like, play it on Xbox, only on Xbox. Be an Xbox customer. This is why you want to be here. And so when you see the media saying like right now, they're like, it will be the biggest booth ever. And Xbox is praising it's going to be the biggest booth. I'm kind of like, that's like if EA was like, we're going to have the biggest presence ever this year at Gamescom. I'd be like, that's great. Let's see these games. Let's go. But like, it doesn't hold that same weight to like when there's a Nintendo showcase or a direct, or when PlayStation ever finally does another showcase. Who the hell knows when that'll be, right? So, I mean, do you see where I'm coming from with that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You can go ahead. I just wanted to say, like, you know, Xbox has definitely been killing their live shows for the most part. Even the developer direct was pretty good. The showcase I thought was amazing.
Very good.
But did it make me want to go out and buy an Xbox if I didn't already have one? And I think that's kind of what you're touching on is, and this was the fear, right? When they first announced that they were going to start making their games multi-platform, it's like, okay, well, now every time you announce a game, people are just going to say, well, when is it coming to PS5? Mm-hmm. Right? So that's kind of what I felt watching that showcase. Like, yes, it was a great showcase. The games all looked really good. And some of it actually did remind me of the old Xbox, especially like that Gears trailer. That reminded me of some of the old classic Xbox trailers.
100%. It was great.
But at the same time, if I'm a PS5 owner, am I going to go buy an Xbox for that? Maybe.
Maybe.
You know, Gears, I don't know if Gears is coming to PS5. Maybe like that's the one game. But like Fable, South of Midnight, all these games realistically will probably come to at least PS5 within maybe a year. At least that's how it seems.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. As far as Gamescom, I mean, like I said, they've been killing their shows. I'm sure it'll be a good show. Maybe we get some release dates like Indiana Jones, something like that. But again, is it going to make me want to go out and buy an Xbox, knowing that it's probably going to come to whatever platform I'm playing on? If it's on PC, I already know it's going to be on PC day one. Yeah. If it's not on PC, well, it's probably going to come to PS5 sooner or later. So I definitely see what you're saying.
But you see, that's more of your psychology. I mean, or Mooch, your psychology. I mean, we as gamers, we have to come to a stark realization, like, you know, cold shower realization. Okay. And that realization is the Xbox business model is not the traditional business model that we as gamers from back in the yesteryears are accustomed to. As I was saying earlier, Xbox doesn't care about the console. They don't even care about Game Pass as much. They just want you to play their game in whichever vector that might be, whether that's Game Pass, Xbox, PlayStation, Steam. They're like, just play our fucking game. Now, will that be something that is profitable? I don't know. I'm not a number cruncher. I was supposed to be a number cruncher.
I know what you're saying, Wise, but you have a situation right now where Hellblade 2 undersold, right? Didn't do well on Steam, didn't move the Game Pass needle. And now you have news that just came out. Microsoft has begun refunding Redfall's Bite Back Edition for Xbox and Steam. So, I mean, and I don't believe for the money that was put, I mean, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I don't believe Starfield lived up to what Microsoft internally was thinking it was going to do. So at the end of the day, you know, when you sit there and you talk about some of the smaller games that like I think Kami just said it, you know, he said when you're talking about Fable or you're talking about Perfect Dark, those games would probably end up on PlayStation 5 within a year after launch on Xbox. So the point of the matter, and you said, is it profitable or not? Well, no one on the panel actually knows that. But I mean, the thing I'm just saying, like, when you see these things happening and you see the numbers coming from Steam on Hellblade 2 not good, and you saw the numbers that you see that they're refunding Redfall's Bite Back Edition. I mean, that's because the product didn't live up to what the propaganda was. And in certain instances, there wasn't enough propaganda. I think they should have advertised Hellblade 2 a lot more than they did.
Well, don't you think that if they're going to put their games on everything, now they're going to have to compete on every platform? They have to compete with Steam games. They have to compete with PlayStation games. They're going to have to compete with Nintendo games, right? So wouldn't that also sort of shift their metrics saying, okay, now that we are in all of these places, then our games have to be compelling enough that would make somebody say, okay, I am not going to buy the next, the next Ratchet and Clank. I'll buy the next, I don't know, insert game here, you know.
Right.
So that type of situation. Now, and I'm going to say something that's going to be pretty controversial to a lot of my panelists who are more on the Xbox side, and they're going to hate this, but I'm going to say it nonetheless. I think from what I'm looking at, the way they shuttered Tango, the way they shuttered Redfall, I think Microsoft is looking at Xbox and saying, look, we don't want these passion projects anymore. Those were good for a time, but now we want the rattlers. We want the things that shake the industry, that when we announce these games, these names reverberate. And what games did they show? They showed Gears of War. Yep. Name reverberated. Doom. Name reverberated. Fable. Name reverberated. So I think these smaller games that are akin to Hi-Fi Rush and all these other small, like they used to do with like Bleeding Edge, and these are going to go to the wayside in lieu of these bigger platform things. And I think that's what you're going to see. That's why I think that you are seeing all these closures, especially with these untried IPs that did not work but did not achieve as much of a success as they were hoping to achieve. So I think that's the direction they're going to be going with that.
Well, I like where you went with that.
That's an interesting. I'm sorry. I was going to say that is interesting because you remember, you remember like Sony kind of said the same thing when they started kind of shuttering like Japan studios and things like that, and the word kind of came down like we're focusing more on the bigger titles, you know, as opposed to some of the small things, which is kind of interesting because, you know, they seem to be trying to still capture a certain market, like with the introduction, you know, of bringing like Astrobot, like a bigger game for that, and Ratchet and Clank and things like that. So it's interesting to kind of see where like they're both kind of going. But I think the interesting thing particularly when it comes to like the Xbox base, if you ask the average Xbox gamer, what is the platform now? Could they answer you?
Yeah,
because you see daily. I watch all the time. I see on the timeline. Again, I always preface this. Twitter is not as important as people want to. As like Twitter, people like to make it seem in the grand scheme. I tell people all the time, break outside of this mold and go talk to gamers who have no concept of what's going on Twitter.
That's right.
And you'll get a whole different perspective.
That's right.
Of what's really going on out there.
That's facts.
Right. So. But if you take the Twitter sample and you watch what's going on, I'm watching infighting going on between some of the Xbox faithful because some of the Xbox fans don't seem to know what the identity of it is anymore. Because on one hand, they want to go along with everything Microsoft is doing, and then on the other hand, they'll say, "Well, I feel like a second-class citizen as a console user." Well, guess what? I mean, that's been for a few years now, Mooch. You can back me up on this. We said it ad nauseum, and with the blocks to prove it. They don't seem to be focused on the Xbox console gamer. And we were called everything except for a child of God for saying so. You know?
Yep.
And that is the reality. It's like, that is not the focus. And you can tell that's not been the focus probably since back in the day when people kept pumping up that Phil's the man now. He's in the big boy chair because he had that meeting with Satya. And something in my head always said, that meeting probably went this way when he went in there and said, "Hey, man, this console thing that you guys were doing is cute, but that's not what we do. How do you fit into what we do here?"
Right. Yeah.
You know, that's kind of seems from that meeting to where we are now, that's kind of been the thing. And now that they spent that big money on one of the biggest publishers in the world, Xbox went from being the cool kids over on their own little campus, kind of doing that cute little project, to being like, "Hey, you guys gonna pay rent this month?" You know, Dad's paying attention now.
I think
Dad's seen the credit card bills coming in, and now it's like, yeah, the fun that you were having, we gotta shore this up, buddy.
You know, it's funny that you said that they lost track of the console, and I think why is that's the one thing that, you know, everyone always says Microsoft is a software company. Of course, absolutely, first and foremost. But the one thing that kept them so relevant through the Xbox 360, the original Xbox, the Xbox 360 definitely, and kept them hanging in there for a while at least, and then it kind of took off at the end for PlayStation with the Xbox One, is that they started by the middle of the Xbox One generation, they started to lose focus on the console. And you don't have to agree with me if you don't want to. I think the proof's in the pudding. It's all out there. You can look. I mean, now they're pivoting again. Now they're going to say, well, geez, power wasn't the way. They've been talking power forever, Wise, right? If they're software based, why are they talking so much hardware the last 5 years? Okay. And then they don't have any games coming out for the first one. We didn't have a whole lot of games. And 2024 was supposed to be the year of Xbox. So far, we've got Hellblade 2, and we know how that went. So, I mean, and I don't think Avowed is going to move the needle. It's just so at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, yeah, you're going to see numbers and quarterly reports coming out that look decent for Xbox. Well, I mean, you go buy Call of Duty, you're going to look good, right? I mean, Wise, I know you're a math teacher. You're going to look good. You know what I mean? It is what it is. So my whole point is that I think at the end of the day, they keep pivoting. Each generation's a pivot. The Xbox One was, Connect, and then this one was Power, and then we have another SKU for you, which was Connect hardware, right? Then you have hardware in the X, hardware in the S. Now they're pivoting again. They're saying hardware in a handheld. And I'm not saying any of it won't work. I mean, I'm always here to try it and see what happens. It's just, to me, when you watch now these Xbox showcases, the fun that was there for like, oh, I wonder how Sony will respond, or I wonder how Xbox will respond, or, is Nintendo really going to... Nintendo comes out of nowhere after the Wii U and just demolishes both of them, And I think that's because PlayStation and Nintendo still very focused on their console. So you can be a software company and still give a crap about your console and your hardware. There's nothing wrong with that. I think Sony, being the hardware company that they are, making TVs, used to make phones, things like that, right? I think they may still make a phone. I don't know who uses
the
one.
Walkman,
right? The Walkman, right?
The
but
Walkman.
they still care about their IP and their software. It's kind of a harmonious thing, right? And I mean, Wise, I can't remember if you said you are an Apple guy or you're not. I think you're an Android guy, but
no, I'm an Apple guy. I'm a totally Apple guy.
So Apple said, hey, you know what? We're going to make our own hardware and our own software, right? Which is the absolute the concept of the console. We're going to have our first party studios making games that make to best ability of our hardware. That's where that whole thing derived from. When people go, oh, that's dated. That's not dated. It's not dated. It's why iOS is the only thing on Apple products.
But you see, the problem is they screwed up royally. They had the best leverage going in from that transition into the 360 to the One era, right? They probably had the best setup to, it's like Rodman got the ball, he rebounded the ball, and he handed it to say Pippen. Yeah. Pippen is going down the court is totally open. All he has to do is do some flourishing dunk, and that's all he had to do. And he jumps up and he freaking bricks it. That's what it feels like,
Yeah.
That's what they've done. They've gotten to the point they bricked the wrong generation, and we've been saying that from the beginning. And I don't think they figured out what the next direction is. Nintendo, they screwed up with the Wii U. They're like, okay, this is way too convoluted. Let's just focus on what works. What works is our handheld. How do we get our handheld and our home console together? Well, you make one hybrid device. Boom, there you go. PlayStation, let's see what's working for us. Well, wow, what sort of saved our keister in the PlayStation 3 generation. The PlayStation 3 generation at the latter end were those games. Let's just go ahead and support those IPs and value those IPs. And this is the key here. They value their IPs. I don't think Xbox values their IPs to the same level as PlayStation and Nintendo, and that is what has always been their biggest detriment. They take their IPs as an expendable property. That, yeah, if we lose one, then another one is there to fill its shoes. And we saw that with Halo. Halo Infinite should not have had come out in the condition, it should not have been demonstrated in the condition it was demonstrated in. But for some reason, that went through everybody's channels and was demonstrated. Okay. This goes to show you that they are not going to, they don't value their IP. Look at Nintendo. Nintendo is in dire need of a Switch 2 right now. Okay. Say what you will, that all Nintendo games are running on a freaking potato. Okay. I mean, my Hamilton Beach toaster oven has a better chip than my Switch does right about now. Okay. I'm sorry to say, but why is Nintendo? Yeah, but it's true. Why is Nintendo choosing not to release the Switch 2? Because they're going to, even if they just release the Switch 2 and it's only backwards compatible, it's going to fly off the shelves. You know that it will, okay? There's no denying that fact. But they're choosing not to release it because there's no games. There's no IP pushers. Same thing, PlayStation, when they demonstrate their IPs, they demonstrate them in the best possible light. Okay, they don't just don't put it out there. And until that time happens, where Xbox has great IPs, I just think they need to start valuing them more. And if they start valuing them more, then those IPs are going to get their own success, and that's going to feed into whatever they're looking to do. So,
if I can piggyback on that for a minute, which is what I've been saying on here before is gaming is a culture, and you have to understand what that culture is. And it seems like for the last generation or so, they haven't understood what the culture is. I very much felt in the 360 generation they understood the culture of it, and that's why people still reference Mad World and seeing the first time you saw, like, you know, the what was it, the Road to E3? I think it was an MTV special, like when Cliffy B's on stage playing Gears. You saw that and you were like, oh my god, I don't care what I have to do, I got to get a 360 to play that game. Right. I've never seen anything like that. Right. And that speaks to a culture of things. And you know, people can say what they want, but what is the Xbox culture around their games? And like WoolleyGamer said, it's like they kind of it's almost like jack of all trades, master of none, taking for granted. Like, hey, we put it out there, we have a hardcore fan base that loves it, and they'll talk about it, and they'll fight on Twitter about it, and blah blah blah. But that's not building a culture. Right. Building a culture is, you know, you look at when Nintendo releases Breath of the Wild, they make a whole entire event about it. They make sure that you can't ignore it, and it speaks to, like, not just their base, but it speaks to just people in general. When they see that, they're like, that looks awesome, I need to play that. You know, culture is putting, you know, what is it, like a 4-story Kratos axe in the middle of, what was it, Denmark Square or whatever, for people to come and take pictures with. You know, projecting your game on the floor during halftime of a basketball game. You know, that stuff, that breeds culture. That it's like hip hop and basketball and football. There's cultures around those things that know how to speak to their fan bases, and that's where they have to find that direction. They got to get people outside of their hardcore base to really want to care about Xbox. And I've said before, you know, Xbox as a brand, if you go back, you know, to the 360 generation, if you watch movies and television, that thing was everywhere. Even the OG was plastered in movies, and that's what they did. And the cool kids talked about it in the movies and everything else, because they were the upstart. Even for being $1 billion company, they were like the upstart in the console space. But they came in and made a lot of noise. You know, and that's kind of what they kind of like dropped the ball on the 1 yard line going into the Xbox One gen. And I'm like, I don't know how you did that when you had the PlayStation basically show you what not to do. Right. Don't do that.
Don't do this.
No, but let me ask you a question, everybody here, okay? Can you name me an IP that Xbox created from the ground up that they did not buy? From day one, all the way from the OG Xbox. And the IP was like huge, like your, you know, God of War level or your Uncharted level or whatever. Can you name an IP that Xbox has bought and they've not bought, Microsoft has not bought, but they have grown internally from their internal developers,
the two that come,
first-party developers,
the two
and
that come
achieve that type of level.
So when you say God of War,
Forza.
I was
Halo as well. I would say Halo's probably the only one.
Halo's
Halo was in development.
Halo's
oh yeah, Apple or whatever.
I was gonna say
Halo's
it was
gonna
a
be an
development
Apple
for
product.
Bungie before
That's right.
Microsoft acquired
Yeah.
Bungie.
No, I would say
they acquired Bungie because of Halo.
I think you're
But,
right, Slow-Mo. First of all, let me welcome Slow-Mo to the show. Slow-Mo, I'm sure you and Forte had an outstanding DPS. We're going to go check that, guys. Please go check out DPS podcast after the show. Slow-Mo, welcome to the Crossfire, buddy. But I do want to say, I to answer your question real quick, because when you say God of War levels, that's where it gets a little shaky. I'm not sure if this will even quantify. Slow-Mo said Forza. I think that's actually a great answer. The only other one I was going to say was either Fable or Sea of Thieves. And I don't know if those,
Fable.
Fable, yeah.
would probably be one.
Thieves famously when it first came out, it was and Fable, we know the circle around what happened with when it first came out with Monolith promising all of the world, and you're like, okay, well, whatever. But yeah, but like most of their major ones, the ones that really were the earth rattlers, like your Halos and your Gears and stuff like that, they bought. Cliff Basinski was developing that for Epic, and then it sort of blew up. And same thing with Halo. Halo was bought from actually famously Apple. It was supposed to come out on Apple's, and they bought the company from Apple. So this is why I feel they've not had that yet. They've not really achieved a game that they've grown internally that has amassed that level of success, or that sort of zeitgeist, if you will, that has come from internally. So they feel that, if Halo flounders, we can go out and buy another one. Mm-hmm. And that has always been their strategy. I mean, even with Bethesda, they got Starfield, but they bought Starfield. Starfield was already in development for all consoles before it came here, Same thing with Call of Duty. Call of Duty was bought, So until such time happens, I don't think it's ever going to change for Xbox. I think that Xbox, number one, if they want to really make inroads into the gaming zeitgeist, number one, they got to give a damn about their IPs. And number two, they got to grow an internal IP that achieves that sort of, I don't want to say commercial success. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that, that the talking zeitgeist. Yeah. That other game.
I think you need to feel an out period for it, because it's like it only really came to fruition for PlayStation 3, because the PS2, let's not talk about PlayStation first party because it's non-existent. Like, the PS2 got its critical acclaim from stuff like Grand Theft Auto, etc., Final Fantasy, all these super exclusive titles coming from everyone else. So but then in the PS3, they couldn't rely on third party like that, because people were like, why am I developing for this shitty ass processor? This cell processor that's just making my life hell, when I could just make it. That's why you saw a bunch of games, third party specifically, that were either exclusive to 360, mainly because they didn't want to bother with the PS3. So PlayStation's out was, look at my first party IP. When The Last of Us dropped, it's like, this is what we're talking about. So they were like, okay, third party ain't messing with us no more. We have to rely on first party to push, and they relied on their first party, and look what happened. You had your God of Wars, you had your Last of Us, you had your Uncharted. Like, they shot out to the league with their first party because they had to. Xbox hasn't been put in a position where they have to, where third parties abandoning them, they're preferring in en masse. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they've gone through the same struggles.
Singer, the first God of War came out on PlayStation 2. Just want to clarify that.
I mean, make it really big, because it was on the PlayStation 2, but the biggest games on there were not the first party. I mean, yeah, I see what you mean, but even today, the biggest games on all these platforms aren't any of the first party games that these platforms are making right now. Like, the biggest game across the board on all platforms is Fortnite, and then when you go past Fortnite, you're looking at like other live service third party games that's free to play. So that's now, but if you think of their first party back in the PS2, when you think of the PS2, the first God of War is not coming to mind. I'm thinking of Grand Theft Auto, I'm thinking of Silent Hill, I'm thinking of Final Fantasy. When I think of PlayStation 2, these were the games I'm playing. You had Tenchu, you had, so that was your main thing. The PS3 forced your hand to make bigger first party titles. Now you look at where the first party is now, that's thanks to the PS3. So, but they didn't have that issue in the PS2. So They
Shout
went
out-
through a really rough spot, but has Xbox ever gone through a rough spot like the PS3 had or the Wii U had?
One could argue that Xbox has gone through nothing but rough spots.
Yeah, but
the whole one generation.
yeah, but
even right now.
third party didn't really abandon them like the way they abandoned the PS3, for example.
They're starting to.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Shout out to,
I mean, yes.
Shout out to Gaming with Persona. Persona, great to have you here in the chat. Persona says Gran Turismo is PlayStation's largest IP and started on PS1. Persona coming in with some. Persona coming in with some facts. No, I think a lot of times, and don't get me wrong, Singer, I've been on a lot of podcasts where what you said about PlayStation 2, a lot of people have said that and they kind of roll with it. But there are, as Slow Mo said and as Persona saying, there were games on the PS2 from first party out there. And I mean, I think that Slow Mo said himself, like Fortnite being the biggest game across all platforms, right? So you're always going to see that.
It's just like anything about like, I understand like going through history, but like as the gaming industry pushes on and moves on, it ebb and flows, things change. There was no such thing as live service, back then. You couldn't even go online to play games around that time period. Now, what we're talking about now is like live service is the wave, unfortunately. It's the, when you look at the most played games on all platforms across the board, everything that's like top 5 is like a live service, free to play, whatever. Some of them are paid,
but there's still
but you even look at Call of Duty, and it's like the most popular portion of Call of Duty is Warzone, which is free. So it's just,
I mean, those games are always going to be number one, right? Like we're not going to hold a candle against Call of Duty. I don't care how big Helldivers 2 is ever going to get. It's never going to usurp Call of Duty, right?
True.
Yeah, I mean, so that being said, both Nintendo and PlayStation still have the market audience when it comes to gaming, because when people talk about, say, Nintendo, right? They're like, oh yeah, I'm looking for the next Mario, next Zelda, Metroid, whatever, right? When you talk about PlayStation, oh, I'm looking forward to the next Horizon, I'm looking forward to the next Ghost of Tsushima, I'm looking for the next whatever, God of War, whatever you want to call it, 2020 or whatever. But Xbox, apart from Halo, Gears, and Forza, they didn't have that, and now you can't even say Halo, because Halo was like, it was okay, and no, it doesn't. It's not. You cannot release a game tattered and fix it later, because you don't have a second chance to make a first impression. I don't care how great your game becomes; it will still be held to that first look. So that being said, I don't think Xbox has that. Xbox doesn't have those zeitgeist controlling games that PlayStation and Nintendo do. And I think that's what they are in dire need of. They need IP that is tethered to their brand.
Yeah, and that's the thing, though. But when you go out and you buy a Bethesda, and Bethesda comes out and they do their own showcase, it's like the Xbox Bethesda showcase. Now, this one here, they merged, and then they do the one that's after. It's what I said to you guys earlier, and it's just a feeling I had. If you guys don't feel that way, that's fine. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying when I watch the Xbox showcase now, it's like watching EA. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, here comes the Bethesda part. Oh, here comes the Activision part. Oh, there's a couple of Microsoft game studios, but they're the smaller games. It's like, okay, all right, I got it. That's fine. But and then you find out a year later they're probably going to be everywhere. It loses a little bit of its desire. If people say that they don't feel that way, that's completely fine. I did miss a super chat. Shout out to the great Sin Vendetta, who's been co-hosting my streams on Twitch for the Elden Ring run. He says, this is back when we were talking about Elden Ring, and I was telling Kami that he's got to wait till we're done with the show for PC or midnight on console. And Sin says, or you could be me and play the DLC 19 hours before it releases. Sin Vendetta has a time machine or I
think it's available right now on PC right now.
He was, but you know what he did? He's been in New Zealand in air quotes, if you know what I'm saying. So shout out to the great Sin Vendetta. Yes. Right. Shout out to Dennis Draz for subscribing. I appreciate that. Gaming with Persona. Shout out to Persona. You guys know Persona and Jay Bari. What's up, PlayStation? 11 a.m. Eastern on Saturdays. He says, Mooch, I had to pause my Doom playthrough when I heard the BS from Singer. Best Singer, you had Persona had to put his controller down and stop playing when he heard about your PS2 comment. I
mean, but the thing is, it's like, yes, they had first party, but you think about what pushed the sales of the PS2. Nothing was bigger than Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Like, San Andreas would have moved consoles off the shelves. Gran Turismo, it was big. I adore Gran Turismo 3 and 4. Fantastic games. But that's what got me into racing games. Gran Turismo on the PlayStation 1. That's what got me into racing games. There was nothing like it. But the first party is like, when you think of the PS2's catalog, the way PlayStation first party is now is not what it was then. Like, PlayStation is indexed super heavily more into first party. But back then, the PS2, like, all the biggest games that shift the consoles were all these third-party releases. That the PS2 was just the home of Final Fantasy. It was the home of Grand Theft Auto. It was like Metal Gear Solid. You had Silent Hill. All these big IP, Tenchu. You had all these massive IPs, and they were all exclusive to the PS2.
And I think right. The competition was what then at that point, though, Singer?
Well, the competition was, the OG Xbox, which sure was making some noise, but they were still missing a lot of key games. And sure, they had their own good exclusives, like KOTOR, Morrowind, and some, like, Fable. Like, okay, they had relatively good, but most third-party were just, we are just staying with PlayStation, because this is where PlayStation is. It's the home of all these games. And Nintendo at the time, I can't remember what Nintendo was doing at the time. They had, the GameCube?
Yeah. No, I think they were on the N64.
Was it N64? Yes.
No, the PS2 was GameCube, because the N64 was the PS1 generation.
Yeah, that's right. It was between those two, yeah.
Yeah.
GameCube.
But the GameCube, Pokemon, they were doing their own things. Like, sure, the GameCube was cute. Mario Kart Double Dash was amazing. Pokemon Coliseum was a vibe. I mean, they had a whole bunch of games, but they didn't have that much third party. Again, they didn't have, like, Nintendo didn't really have that, because everyone just wanted to be on the PS2, because you had 140 million PS2 sold, so everyone was just PS2 all the way.
Shout out to
let me just
go ahead,
state some numbers real quick. Highest sold, the top 10 highest sold games on PlayStation 2. The number one is Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, as you mentioned before. But number 2 is Gran Turismo 3. Number 3 is Gran Turismo 4. Number 4 is Grand Theft Auto Vice City. 5 is Final Fantasy X, which I thought was. Let me not talk about Final Fantasy X. I love Final Fantasy. I didn't quite care for that one. That's not important anyway. 6 is GTA 3. 7 is Metal Gear Solid 2, 8 is Tekken 5, 9 is Final Fantasy 12, and 10 is Kingdom Hearts. So 2 and 3 is a Sony first party game.
Gran Turismo.
It's Gran Turismo, but the point was the first party isn't like it is now back then. The PS2 PlayStation wasn't renowned for its first party. It was renowned for other things.
But Singer, none of that stuff, like, this is what I was saying earlier, it's too, like, that was decades ago. PS2, man, I ain't been in college yet, like, and I'm 40 now. It's just like it's a long time ago, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's so different now that it's like, well, I understand what you're trying to say, but it's just not relevant to now, because now things are so different now, and how games are made are different now. And if you want to really get into the weeds with it, Sony understands that, which is the reason why they've invested so much into live service games, whether people like it or not. They have invested a lot into live service. Helldivers 2 has done well, but, Concord remains to be seen. Marathon's coming. They own Bungie with Destiny. Final Shade did really, really well. They understand that, and they understand where the numbers are and which games are the most played on their platform, make the most money on their platform, and they are actually actively doing things, taking steps to make sure that at least one of their games is somewhere in there, enjoying that same level of success. When it comes to Xbox, I don't think they even care about stuff like that no more. As far as they're concerned, games everywhere. And they may not come out and
now look,
say that.
I didn't mean to get. Well, listen, slow mo. Not to cut you off. I ruined Persona's weekend. Persona. Welcome to the show. What's good?
Real talk. I'm sorry, Mooch. I never do this stuff, so I do apologize.
No, it's all right.
Don't
It's
beat me up.
CrossFire. The singer
But
loves it. Go ahead.
slow mo. We about to call slow mo the encyclopedia. That boy out here, he Webster. He out
Webster.
here dropping the facts. You hear what I say? The man, I literally am sitting here listening to this shit because I had to pause. I'm playing Doom Eternal. I had to pause the game, but I'm hearing what's being said because I'm like, what the hell? Singer, you my boy, but what the hell are you talking about, bro? PlayStation first party on PS2 has some of the most iconic franchises to this day. Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank, God of War, G.O.T.Y. What are we talking about, brother? And they released multiple Killzone, which was started on PS2. What are we talking about when it comes to first party for PlayStation? And G.O.T.Y. is one of the best-selling games in PlayStation's history. But even when it comes to the industry as a whole, the GT franchise is about to hit 100 million copies sold if it hasn't already with the release of GT7. So what are we talking? Yo, Singer, you can't be this oblivious. When it comes to third party, I do agree that third party on PlayStation, when it comes to the JRPGs, the San Andreas, the Warriors, all that stuff, that also is what propped up PlayStation to be super, super successful as well. I'm not diminishing that. But to say that first party wasn't a big deal on PlayStation and PS2, let's cut it out, bro. Let's cut it out.
I'm saying
we gotta stop this.
No, what's the PlayStation 2 was the PlayStation 1. We know that. PlayStation 1 was ungodly successful. PlayStation 2 was like, okay, we got to get that. Okay, it wasn't any necessarily one game on the PlayStation 2. It was just the collection because remember before then, the last company that had all of those games in one platform was the Super Nintendo. So when PlayStation started getting everything, and then it was like, okay, it was a no-brainer. You had to buy it. Who was the other choices at that time? It was the Xbox 360 transition and the Nintendo 64 GameCube transition, which neither of those consoles had the catalog that the PlayStation had going in from the 1 to the 2. So so PlayStation sort of sold PlayStation 2. So
there's a reason why the PlayStation 2 is still to this day the best-selling console. The Switch might beat it, no cap. But as of right now,
Switch might beat it next week.
Yeah, the Switch might beat it, no cap. But there's a reason why for over 3+ generations after PS2's launch, PS2 is still considered the best-selling home console in the history of consoles and gaming. Because when you look at the repertoire of games from a first party to a third party perspective, that it's elite. It is like bar none elite. Like it's unbeatable.
No, well, I'm going to support Singer.
No, I'm saying the Singer. Who's that talking? I don't know who's this.
That was Wise.
I don't know your name.
Say Persona. See, the caveat with the PS2 is it was a super cheap DVD player at the time. Let's not pretend some people bought it. No.
All right, bro.
No. To defend Singer, I think what he's trying to say is they didn't care about their IPs. Well, I think that they didn't care in the PlayStation 1 era because they're just trying to get their foothold.
Wait, who didn't care? PlayStation didn't care about their IPs?
In the PlayStation 1 era, I don't think they did. I think in the PlayStation 2 era, you saw the transition where they started looking and valuing more of their IP. PlayStation 1, they were just trying to get as many games onto that platform as possible. So, yeah.
So, Shawn Laden had said, that during the PS1 era, the idea was to get some of the biggest franchises on there because they were just starting out. So, so that makes sense that, them trying to get their foothold in the business of gaming. You kind of want to lock things down or whatever. And even when you look at that, they got one of the most iconic franchises on that platform with Final Fantasy VII that skipped Nintendo. And it
Crash Bandicoot also.
Crash Bandicoot as well. Shout out to you,
That's why I bought a PlayStation. And Final Fantasy VII.
Talk. Because remember, me, it was crashing Final Fantasy for me. That's what did it for me. And those are highly iconic. And wait, Spyro's hold up, bro. Wait a second.
yeah,
No. We're not going to do this. Hold up. Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, and Final Fantasy. Those are highly coveted and respected franchises on the PS1. Now, when you go to the PS2, they just take things to like times 100. When you look at the layout of games, it's crazy. And Sega, to say that it's relegate, you try to relegate it down to a DVD player. Yo, listen, bro. Go back and look at that PS2 catalog. There is no system touching that outside of Nintendo.
But the fact that
Nintendo's catalog.
DVDs didn't hurt it any though. It was the cheapest
You
DVD.
didn't mention Final Fantasy Tactics. Final Fantasy
is-
Tactics was fantastic. I love that game.
To respond to Persona on this is, I know some people who personally, I used it as a DVD player. I know some people personally who bought it because it was cheaper than what a DVD player you could buy at the time. But yes, I was there when the PS2 was launched. I was there through the entire generation. I love the PS2. Gran Turismo is one of my formative games. The reason I love racing games so much is because of Gran Turismo. I still even have the hard copy of the guide for Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec, which shows you all the cars that you can unlock from different races. So, yes, I understand that. But when I think of the PS2, the only first-party game I think of, when I think back to it, I just think of Grand Theft Auto, I think of Metal Gear, I think of Final Fantasy, and I think of Gran Turismo. I don't think of these other games. And if you ran a poll, what's the first game you think of when you think of PS2? How many of those responses are not going to be Grand Theft Auto? Are going to be something else?
No, but see, that's the thing. I agree with you in that regard that the third party, especially with Gran Turismo, I mean, for me, I played Gran Turismo San Andreas into the ground. I've played that game maybe 3 million times, so I agree with you there. But the point that the reason why I even am in here to say that is because you were trying to dismiss PlayStation first party on PS2 as being a minor thing, and it isn't. It's a very, very large part of PlayStation 2's success. And shout out to Slow-Mo, he just read it off to you. 2 of PlayStation first party titles are the highest selling on that life cycle of that. It's right next to Gran Turismo. I mean, it's right next to Grand Theft Auto. It's Grand Theft Auto and then GT3 and GT4. Those games are highly, highly coveted. And again, God of War, Sly Cooper, and all those other, and Killzone, right? All those other franchises that started on PS2, they start there. Yo, that's big as well. Now, is it a GTA? No, of course not. But those franchises are also highly respected and highly coveted, and also make up the PlayStation 2's makeup when it comes to the success of the PS2.
So you know what? And I'm actually glad Persona came in here and we actually had that conversation, because you mentioned it, Persona, a second ago. Shawn Laden recently, and by the way, we gotta give props and flowers where they're due. Shout out to Persona again, and Jay Barry, who had Shawn Laden on first, as far as I know, than any other podcast or interview. And then you've got Shawn Laden now recently just did an interview. I don't remember if it was with Eurogamer or who it was he actually sat down with. Guys, please correct me where I'm wrong.
He sat down with GameIndustry.biz.
Okay, yes, there's the article. I just pulled it up right now. 100% on point. Chris String is who he sat down with. I apologize. But he's saying, really, when it comes down to it, he says it's making the games that are the faster and cheaper games, making games shorter and getting games out there and letting these teams be creative. And that's what would save the industry. He's not necessarily thinking games like, Call of Duty. And I'll read it real quick here. He says here, I'm just looking real quick. Here. He says the vast majority of the planet has already said Grand Theft Auto is not that interesting. Call of Duty is not that interesting. Laden says they were both huge hits in our little village of gamers, of course. But I think he's basically saying here, and I'm jumping from parts of the article to parts of the article, but he's saying those games are already big AAA games. Those games are already out there. That's not something that's changing. Like Call of Duty this year coming out isn't changing Call of Duty from the last 10, 15, 20 years of Call of Duty. But it's the smaller games that are going to make the consoles thrive. PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo. And I don't know, Persona, what did you think about that? Because you've talked to Shawn on these topics and more. Is it giving that creativity in those smaller games the ability to shine? And that's where the money and focus should go moving forward. So you get the games out faster. And yes, you get more of those, like you were saying before, the Sly Coopers, right? And the Ratchet and Clanks. Now they're household names, but they weren't back then. But you let these teams put these games out that didn't take forever to make, didn't cost a fortune, and people fell in love with them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Shawn Laden to a degree. I do think that because I'm somebody where like I grew up on like JRPGs and playing like, you know, the Assassin's Creeds and big open world games. So for me personally, you know, if a game is short or if it's longer, you know, if it's a good game, it's a good game, right? Like I don't want to put a length to it, and that is the determining factor of if it's a great game because, you know, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which released in February, you know, that game took me about 130 hours just to complete. And that was a long game and a massive open world and things like that. And I loved it, right? But, you know, if I'm playing an open world game and it's a boring game or not a good gameplay loop, then it's not, it's not something I'm going to enjoy. So I think it depends on the person. But to speak to Shawn Laden's, his comments on like games being shorter, things like that, I think when you look at the grander scheme of things with this community and how people are trying to equate a dollar value to the length of a game, I'm not sure how some people may take that when it comes to the length of the game. Just look at, Hellblade 2. You know, a lot of people would tell you that game is not worth buying because it's only 5 hours at $50.
Right.
But that's what the creators made. That's what they felt was a respectable length and time, and to tell the story that they wanted to tell, that's the time that they needed, and that's the asking price. And a lot of people didn't see that as a good value, right? But, you know, you look at something like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, you have people saying that's too long and I can't beat this game because I got, you know, other responsibilities or whatever, and they're complaining. So it's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. You know, gamers are very fickle. I personally think that when it comes to AAA gaming, I do think that some of the budgets might be kind of out there, but I think part of that has to do with people. You know, this is why people love these games, though, right? If you go on stage and you show this game that doesn't look as pretty, or it doesn't, you know, or you have this new AAA game and it's only 10 hours, 12 hours, you're gonna have people questioning that,
right? And
that might hurt it. Like, oh well, I'll wait for a sale. That's what a lot of people will say. That's a lot of people's favorite words. I'll wait for a sale. Me personally, it's kind of like I'll take it or leave it. If the game is good, I'm gonna buy it and support it. That's my motto. That's my mindset. And that's really how I approach all games, right? Because, you know, when you look at Nintendo, you know, a lot of Nintendo's games don't take super duper long to beat, and they're $70. But unfortunately, Nintendo being the grandfather of gaming, everybody's not afforded that luxury. EA can't do that. PlayStation can't do that to a degree, right? Xbox can't do that to a degree where they can release majority of their games at $60 or $70 a pop, and it only take 5, 6, 7, 8 hours to beat. That's just not going to fly with PlayStation or Xbox, unlike it would with Nintendo. And that's just how it is. Like, Nintendo gets, you know, they're the grandfather gamer. For a lot of people, that's their gateway into gaming. So Nintendo, unfortunately, has certain rules that don't apply to them that apply to Xbox and PlayStation. It
was funny, though, you know, and I want to hear what the rest of you guys got to say, but Persona, you brought up Hellblade 2 and the way that kind of all transpired over the past month and a half or so. But I just looked it up. The first Hellblade sold 1 million copies between its August 8th, 2017 release and June 24th, 2018 release. About 10 months later as a timed exclusive PlayStation release. And we don't have the exact numbers, and sometimes with Xbox we never will, but I don't know if they're going to... You would think now that Hellblade in the community is a much more known... That's why when people say... I do think that Hellblade 2 eventually will make its way to PlayStation 2, because I think that Xbox would want to make that money. Shout out to Wise Old Gamer, who was making that point earlier, right? Software company. They want to make that money. I don't see why they wouldn't want to do that. I think when it comes down to it, I mean, I want to ask Kami or what did you think of Shawn Laden's comments? Did you get a chance to read the article?
I did. I was under the impression that he was talking more about those bigger games, kind of like FF7 Rebirth, those 100+ hour games. Those are the ones that we got to bring down the cost of those. And if that means the game has to be shorter, you know, maybe gamers are just going to have to accept that. I mean, you know, Spider-Man 2 was 20 hours, but, you know, 20 to 30 hours, and it cost $200 million. So that's kind of what I think Shawn was getting at. We are still going to need those experimental games. And we know that Sony has dedicated teams still working on those smaller experimental games. They have a whole category for it. And those are probably just inherently not going to cost as much to make. I think it's those big AAA games that really need to come down in cost
Yeah, I think
for
that's
the health of the industry.
that is a good point. Slow-mo, what do you think about that? I mean, when it comes down to it, Persona made a point to say that Xbox, PlayStation gamers, we are one of the first ones to always be like, oh my God, 5 to 7 hours. But, at the end of the day, there's plenty of games, and Hellblade 1 being one of them, right? That wasn't much longer than Hellblade 2. I mean, if Hellblade 2 was clocking in at 5 to 7, what was that one? 7 to 9? I don't know. It wasn't very long. But people were paying money for that back in the day. I don't know if that was at a $40 charge or that was at a $60 charge for 2017.
Yeah, Hellblade 1 wasn't a full.
I don't think it was
full-priced,
full. No.
game.
No,
No,
it was like 40 came out.
Yeah, I thought it 40, right, Eric?
No, Hellblade was $40.
Yeah, 40.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean that definitely plays a
no,
role, but
I think that the game industry needs to go through kind of a little bit of a evolution, and not just in the kind of games they develop, but the tools that they use as well. I think that part of the reason why game development takes so long is that like they want to achieve a certain visual fidelity, animations, photorealistic visuals. All that stuff takes time, and you gotta have hundreds and hundreds of developers, support studios helping you. Like, take The Last of Us Part 2. Naughty Dog's like a 300 developer studio, but they had like a dozen support studios. The total number of people who helped work on the game was like close to 2,000. Like, not everyone can do that, and it takes a long time to make these kind of games. So I think that although people hate to see it and they hate to hear, these kind of things, especially developers, but like AI has to play a focus in lowering the time it takes.
Time and commitment,
and the
yes.
toll it takes on developers as well. They'll complain about crunch, but then they don't want tools that make the job easier for you. Sure, it might end up replacing some people, but as the industry is evolving and maturing, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. You can't just say, hey, look, this is an easier way to, for example, do NPC conversations in a game, in an open world game. We can just have AI create these conversations.
Yeah, but slow-mo.
We don't need to actually do that work ourselves.
Slow-mo, do you remember when we were podcasting though? Don't get me wrong, by the way, what you just said, it makes business sense, it makes logical sense, and as we go further into the future, it's probably going to even make more sense. My point is this: we were talking on podcasts when AI was first being brought up. Remember, there was the whole the AI is going to write the stories, it's going to do this, it's going to do that, it's going to figure this out. What a turnaround, right? People talk about AI in quite a positive light these days.
You could go to chat, what was it, GP, whatever it's called,
ChatGPT.
Right? You can go any AI program and say, like, write me a story about a hero that has a gun for an arm and he wears pink. Yeah, and they will give you the greatest story. You'd be sitting there like, oh my God, this is actually pretty interesting. Like it's just out of nowhere. And yes, it's using actual human creativity
and scenarios,
and content to create these kind of things, which means that we will still have humans actually working on these games to give direction and whatnot. It doesn't mean Skynet's coming to kill you and your family tomorrow. It just means that like these are things or ways that kind of make things more efficient. I've been talking about this ever since I talked to a guy who used to work at Ubisoft, and he told me how like Ubisoft, well, for those of us who work in tech, you'll have programs like Perforce, for example, and you'll have a build of a game, and you'll check the build in, but only one person can check it out at a time. So you gotta wait for someone to be done with it to kind of put the work that you put in back into the game. This stuff takes time. I've even seen and heard of like other developers, I'm not gonna name the studio, that where they laid off a guy and he had a build checked out, and it took them nearly a month to get the build checked back in so they could then do further updates on the game. All this stuff slows down the process. Ubisoft uses a cloud-based solution for that, and their cloud-based solution allows all the, because Ubisoft got like 30 developers all over the world, and this allows them to even when other people in Canada are asleep, the teams out in freaking Dubai or something are actually building and putting and working and they can actually do multiple builds checked in all at once. This is advancements in the middleware and tools that these developers use in order to make sure that they can actually get games out quicker. And what has happened, even though people may not like Ubisoft games, you may whatever, right? But look how fast they come out.
Yeah.
Massive Entertainment that made The Division 2 just did Avatar, and it's which is a AAA game and beautiful looking. I thought it was boring. I ain't really play it like that, but whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Avatar and Star Wars Outlaws is about to come out in a few months. 2 AAA games within a year, and after that, they're gonna work on Division 3, which will probably be out before next generation starts. These are the things that need to happen. And sure, you can say, well, Ubisoft does the whole typical Ubisoft format. Not all their games are like that now. Especially if you look at what Avatar is doing and what Star Wars Outlaws is doing. It's just that they gotta advance these tools. Mm-hmm. And they gotta start allowing newer ideas to come in, because I get it, it's business. You don't want to spend $200 million on a maybe. You want to spend $200 million on a game that you already know.
Yeah,
that game that you already know is successful because someone else already did it. Even if it's an indie developer. And that's what innovation typically comes from. It comes from the indie and AA space. They don't have someone telling them don't do it, and so they do it, and then it turns out there's a lot of trash out there that don't work, right? But the ones that do work show is a proof of concept that this can work, and then AAA developers go to publishers and say, we're going to take this bigger budget, blow it up, it's going to be fantastic. That's how innovation finally makes it to the AAA space. Mm-hmm. They gotta it's too expensive. So maybe some of these smaller projects like Hi-Fi Rush that came from, a first-party developer need to be, more experimental stuff that sticks out there, and hopefully it don't shut the studio down.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because a few people in the chat are, we're not saying by no means AI taking the replacement, and you even heard Slomo say, no way is AI taking the replacement. You still have to have that human interaction, that human creativity. What AI is pulling right now too, Slomo, I mean, right, from what we're reading, is created by humans. It's just that they're mishmashing it together for us. That's basically what they're doing when you go to ChatGPT. That was the example you were using. You know. I do want to say this, though. So you kind of also went into... So I really do want to have a great little Elden Ring discussion with you guys as we kind of approach the 9 o'clock hour here. And I know Kami is looking at his watch. But I got to tell you this, right, Kami? I already know he's booting it up. Here's the thing.
Hey, Mooch, actually, I gotta drop, bro.
Okay, E, thanks for being here tonight, buddy. I really appreciate it. Let everyone know where they can find you, dude. No problem. Outstanding having you on the show as always, Eric.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Again, great discussions, great people. Always a good time being here. You can find me on Twitter, EC Jackson with an X. For some reason, aggravating people, just saying the most menial, putting up the most menial posts, getting thousands of likes and hundreds of retweets off of nothing. But hey, you never know what the algorithm is going to push out there and piss people off. But hey, it's all good.
That's so true. E.
Anyway.
No, that's usually how it goes.
Mr. Eric,
yes, sir.
Is it? I messaged you on Twitter. I don't know if you just went into your junk spam or something. I was trying to see if, one night, maybe if you're free on a Friday night, if you could, hop in on our podcast with the one I do on Friday. So.
Yeah, no doubt.
I love the collaboration.
Are we following each other?
Yeah, I sent it to you on Twitter. It's been a while, but I'll send you another one once I hop off of this podcast.
Yeah, or no, just DM me because it might have just gotten lost in the sauce. But yeah, definitely, man.
Cool, thanks, man.
Appreciate you as always.
All right, catch you guys later.
Thanks, E. I got a couple of super chats here, and then I want to get to Kami here. Impatient Fire says, and I apologize, Impatient Fire, when you sent these, I was just about to read them, and the great gaming persona came in. He goes, I got to talk to Singer. I got to talk to him. But Impatient Fire said, GT3 on the PS2 sold 14 million copies. stop it. He says GT3 was the third highest selling game on PS2. TrueWiddy says Jack and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank was PS2. Shout out to TrueWiddy. And the Great Gaming with Persona says, make sure you all hit that live button. All too kind. The Great Gaming with Persona, guys. Khalid Pratt says, appreciate the work. Keep it up. Thank you, Mr. Pratt. I appreciate that, guys. I appreciate the super chats. But let's talk a little Elden Ring for a second here, folks, because this is exciting. Kami, what is your take on the game, the DLC of what you've seen? And my other question to you, I mentioned it again. We didn't have a lot of time last week to talk about it because the show went 3 hours and I didn't get nearly near my topics. Do you have a problem, not you yourself, Kami, because I know for a fact you're already past it, but do you see a problem with having the Elden Ring DLC locked behind game progression? Is that a smart move?
It's interesting. I think FromSoft is maybe the only developer that could pull that off, especially because it's pretty late game. From what I've seen, though, the DLC looks amazing. I've been trying to go in relatively blind, but from the little trailers I've seen and stuff, it looks really good, and I can't wait to dive in. I don't really see a problem with it, to be honest. I think it does make it a little bit more complicated. Like, let's say you started New Game Plus a year ago, and now you got to play through, 10, 20, 30 hours of the game.
Yeah.
Get to Moog, get to Radahn. So, it can be frustrating, but I don't know. I don't see a problem with it personally.
So, Slow-Mo, you just put something in the chat. Says, I'm ready for Elden Ring to make me cry. Slow-Mo, how far did you get on the campaign? And pardon me, I should know this, and I don't. Slow-Mo, how far have you gotten through the campaign? Did you beat the game? I got to tell you, I didn't think you were a big Souls fan. How did I miss this?
I'm not a massive Souls fan, although my first Souls game was Demon Souls Remake. And then I played Elden Ring, and I got really, really invested in Elden Ring. I got a true platinum. When I say true platinum, what I mean is I didn't save scrub one character and just I raised up 3 different characters and beat the game and got the 3 different endings needed on those trophies for all those characters. So I got a true platinum. Like, it shines a little brighter than some of these other ones. But what I'm saying is that I'm in that game. I beat it.
So you
4 times now.
And I will say that FromSoft has done this for, I think, all their DLCs are locked behind some sort of game progression. So it's not like it's something new.
I'm glad you brought that up, Kami.
Yeah. I'm raid ready. I'm sorry, not raid ready. Good grief. We're game
playing that final shape.
DLC ready.
I am DLC ready, and I've been DLC ready for a minute. I had one character that I forgot to even fight Moog with, and I just took care of that like weeks ago. So yeah, look, I'm down, and I think it's funny because there's gonna be some people that are gonna fight Moog in the sewers and not
the actual one.
They gotta fight, which is hilarious. Because I actually have been saying that I can't wait to see like the comments of people like, I spent $30-$40 in this DLC and
I can't play.
I can't wait. I just want to see the tears. But I'm looking forward to it. I've been seeing a lot of people who have played it already give me some good feedback. People are saying the bosses are harder. I'm like, bet, let's go. People are saying that just regular mobs and enemies are harder, and I like some of the new weapons that they've introduced. I want to definitely try out the hand-to-hand combat that's in there now.
Yes, for sure.
And then I heard the final boss is like, I don't know if this is cap or not. I guess we'll find out. But like the hardest boss like ever for Souls, and I'm just like, why are people doing this?
Oh God!
God. Come on!
Why y'all saying stuff like this? You're making me wish I could play it right now. Because I'm kind of like equally like excited to take on that challenge, and then equally kind of like scared because I don't want to be like attempt 35 and I'm like about to break my controller, but I'm here for it.
So now slow-mo too quick,
just go to the main boss and say the safety word for tonight is this. So there you go.
Yeah, right. Slow-mo, 2 quick questions for you. What level is your character at and where are you playing it?
Oh god, I've been playing like I mentioned Platinum, so I played it on PlayStation. I would have played it on PC, but at launch it was bugging. I do own it on PC, but I normally just experiment with stuff on PC. My characters, I got 4 of them. I got a strength build, I got a dexterity build, I got a faith build, and I got an intelligence build, and they're all within the range of like 180 to 210.
Oh, okay. So you're definitely DLC ready in any of those characters.
Yeah.
You're ready to rock and roll. So you guys know I'll throw my 2 cents out there, and then I want to hear the rest of the panel. I want to hear what Singer's got to say about the game. I dragged my feet. I played a good amount of it. I'm going to end up fighting Moog and Radon tomorrow, and then go right into the DLC. So I'm probably gonna be streaming for about 3-4 hours. I want to play at least 2 hours of the DLC. So I dragged my feet. That's a me problem. But I do want to hear a Singer. Singer, what's your thought on Elden Ring? I've always, for the past 4 or 5 weeks, we've really talked a lot about the games that you enjoy on the show and after the show. I don't ever remember you mentioning Souls. That doesn't mean you don't like Souls. I just don't remember you mentioning Souls. Is this on your agenda for the weekend?
It is not, because I have a few other games to play currently. So it's obviously, I'm happy for the people who enjoy it.
Yes.
I'm not really into Souls games. Elden Ring was my first Souls game. So, because at the time, like, I didn't pay attention to Souls like that. So as my first game, I'm getting into it. I like it. I'll pick up the DLC, but I'll probably pick it up like later down the line, because currently I have a couple of games on the go. Like, I'm replaying through the Trail series. And then I combine it with my multiplayer. So I really don't have the time at the moment to dive into anything else. So I'll probably just pick it up later on down the line when it's a bit quieter.
Now, I am shocked, though, Singer, that you mentioned that Elden Ring is your friend. I wouldn't have even batted an eye at that comment. The only reason I'm saying this is you've known the great Ash and Luca for so long. Luca's what got me to play. She got me to play Bloodborne. And she's like, Mooch, you need to play this. And I did. I got the platinum in it, and I got to tell you something. I've never looked back since. I've been a Souls fan since. I give all my credit to Luca, and of course the great Sin Vendetta as well. And Luca and Sin are very good, very close as well. But I mean, like, I'm shocked she didn't talk you into a little Bloodborne before Elden Ring, or did she try and you said no, Singer?
She like, we had the conversation about when Elden Ring first launched. Like, she knows this is my first Souls game. And she didn't really push me hard on it, and it's like Souls was never really that game for me. Like, when Dark Souls first released, I was just kind of like, that's cool, but I'm playing this, and then I missed the whole Souls train back in the day. So I've never really had an affinity to it, but Elden Ring was my first dive into it. So yeah, I
think a lot of people are like that. So.
Yeah. Shout out to the Claymores. He says here, and I like this. He says DLC locked for 3 reasons: story lore, menu selecting a campaign is immersion breaking. FromSoftware never does it in quotes, pardon me, in parentheses, and people that can't beat Moog wouldn't be able to play through the DLC anyway.
That's very true. That last point, yeah. If you can't beat Moog,
really,
okay,
you gotta go.
Your money.
You gotta go hit the lab, my friend.
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, I haven't played it, but people are saying that the DLC is like the bosses are harder. Moog's not a hard boss, so if you can't beat him,
well, that's what I was gonna say.
Look, don't even do the whole. Don't listen to the Souls people that be like, oh, don't use summons, don't do this, don't dodge, don't do it. Like they be just saying all kinds of stuff. Play the game.
Yeah.
Look, if it's in the game, use it. Right. If you can't beat Moog with summons,
right. But wait a minute, though. But
I mean, it sucks to say you can't beat the DLC, but you really can't. Like, he's not that hard of a boss.
I thought Melania was the hardest boss.
She is in the base game. She's the hardest boss. Yeah.
Okay. So Moog really shouldn't present. Would you say Moog is the second most difficult, or no?
No, not even close.
Okay.
He's not even top 10.
Then I don't think a lot of gamers would have a hard time with it. Then I would assume that, and by the judge of the sales of this thing, I bet you. And Kami, I'm waiting for you to give me those sales numbers.
I've been watching it, man.
I know.
I think we're at like 600K on Steam already.
Is it like the best-selling DLC ever or something like that?
Well, it's the highest rated DLC ever on Metacritic with a 95, which is absurd.
That's higher than Phantom Liberty?
Yeah, I think Phantom Liberty is like an 89.
Really?
I think
thought
the
Phantom Liberty was higher than that. Let me go ahead.
Witcher 3 Blood and Wine was the previous high with a 92. So Elden Ring is comfortably ahead of that.
Yeah. Elden Ring
You're right. Phantom Liberty is at 89. I'm shocked.
Yeah.
I love Phantom Liberty.
Yeah, it's really good. I know it should be at least a 90. I feel like there's no way it's 89.
Yeah.
So Wise Old
It
Gamer.
must have dropped that to an 89 because I thought it was in the 90s when it.
I thought it was in the
launched,
90s as well, Slow-Mo. So yeah, but I did see the numbers and the stats that Kami's talking about yesterday. So it's sitting comfortably at what, 95?
Yes. So 3-4 points ahead of number 2.
Wise Old Gamer, can I expect you to be playing Elden Ring and in frustration smashing one of your great controllers? What can I expect from you, Wise?
Okay, so yeah, I can say this about the DLC. I was not really into Elden Ring. Well, full disclosure, this is how it happened. I played Elden Ring and I got out of the crypt. This is the very beginning, right? And like when the game first came out, like the first hour or so, that guy on the horse that you first see once you come out of the catacombs. I don't know.
Tree Sentinel.
Tree Sentinel. Yeah.
So I go to him, and of course he doesn't even stop animation. He just literally just walks in and mows me down every time I go to him. Right. So I'm sitting here. I've been fighting this a-hole for like the past hour and a half. Okay. My 13-year-old kid who only plays like freaking Fortnite and Valorant comes to me and says, "Hey, is that the new Elden Ring game?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Can I try it?" I said, "Sure." He picks up the controller. He picks up my PlayStation 5. Never had played this game. Okay. Goes to the Tree Sentinel and hands his ass to him. And he says, "Yeah, this is a pretty cool game," and gives me back the controller. And I'm like,
damn.
What?
Have you played other Souls games before though?
No, I did play Demon Souls, and I've played
Has your son played other Souls? Because like control wise, it's controls the same, it's the same.
No, never.
It's just
that's insane if he's never played any of them.
Yeah,
That's
he looked
wild.
at it, he played, he was like, yeah. And then he gave me the controls. Yeah, this is a pretty good game. I'll get around to it when I do. And I'm like, and I just like, okay, screw this. I'm not playing this game anymore.
I know you're humor wise. I could see you already like giving your son the side eye while he's doing it.
Exactly.
So
you can imagine that was like the biggest ego drop ever in the history of ego drops for a dad. And so I walked away. And then games came in and stuff, and I was meaning on going back to Elden Ring. But when I saw the DLC and I saw what people were talking about, I'm not a big fan. I mean, I don't care about spoilers. I mean, it is what it is. And I'm like, I got to play it. So like, I have now committed to the fact that I am going to start streaming a fresh build. So fat Asian math teacher playing Souls-like for first time. So it might be a good watch for some folks. So,
there you go, Wise.
But it means a lot if the DLC is making me come back and buy the content. In fact, somebody stole my disc for my PlayStation, so I had to buy the whole game plus the DLC. So I paid $80 for it again. And I mean, that says a lot. If I'm willing to pay $80 for a game that I already own,
right,
just to play the DLC. So it goes or tells you what you need to see.
I would misplace a lot and it's funny, we used to talk about this on podcasts all the time, and we've kind of stepped away from it because again, as time goes forward, we all change and we all go towards the direction of technology. And I don't buy physical that much at all anymore. I remember when I used to even say I was doing 70-30 digital. It's probably, I'll say 90-10 digital with good graces. That's just if like I'm passing by, and I generally have, you get a lot of anybody that belongs to like GameStop or you're a pro member, there's a lot of incentives to go in and use. They give you like $5 worth of value on this. They give you great trade-in value. If it's not something like that on a game, I generally am buying digital. You know what I mean? Wise, and I know that maybe you're holding on to the golden root, your roots there, but I mean, I got to tell you, you might as well just go digital at this point. Wise, you'll never lose another game.
And that's what I've done ever since Sony forced me to pay $300 for a robotic elephant and a download code for Horizon. I said, I'm just going to go digital from now on.
That is correct. That is the right answer. So, real quick question, round robin, and we'll get out of here to play some Elden Ring. Kami, would you prefer FromSoft to make their next game Dark Souls-ish or more towards a Sekiro?
Oh, that's a hard question, man.
It is. It is for a lot of From fans. It kind of makes a lot of us think about it for a second. Some answer right away.
I personally loved Armored Core 6. That was my game of the year last year, which is a bit of an odd choice, I know, but
interesting.
Now that we are getting this Elden Ring DLC, I would be open to them doing something else for their next game.
Okay. All right. I kind of like this. You're saying going in a new direction. Slow-mo, what do you think? More Souls-like or more like Sekiro-like? Or
I think it's going
to,
I would say, well, not me personally, because I suck at parrying. But I think it would probably be more Sekiro-like, since I think Miyazaki, that's his name, right?
Yeah, Miyazaki.
Yeah. He I think he in a recent interview or some recent comments, he said something about like mixing Bloodborne and Sekiro gameplay elements for the next game or something like that. So I think it's probably going to be more along those lines. So I'll probably be crying a whole lot more because I just suck at parrying. I just overthink it all the time. So I just always miss it. But
it's funny, Slomo, because you play a lot of shooters, and I just hear you say that, and I'm just agreeing with you the whole time because like I'm playing through Stellar Blade, and like for me, like the I'm always doing the anticipation maybe a hair too early on a lot of the parrying. And it's such a crucial part of the game that, like, I will say this much, though. When you are fighting a boss in Stellar Blade and you parry every single execution and then get the special move off right after that, those are combos and things that you acquire throughout the game. There's nothing quite so satisfying, but I'm always overthinking the parry. So I know what you're talking about, and it at times is very frustrating. I'm not going to lie to you. So yeah, I definitely hear that. I want Death Singer. I know you're not. You played Elden Ring, so you want more Elden Ring in the Souls fashion, or do you want more of a Sekiro, or them to step out of the box and how they did with what was it called? Armored Core 6? Yeah.
I wouldn't mind them doing another Armored Core or just stepping out of the box, to be honest.
If I had to guess, that's probably what they're going to do, because Miyazaki has been talking about experimenting and trying different genres. Like, I think he just came out with an interview today where he said he wants to make a JRPG. So,
wow.
If I had to predict, I think their next game is not going to be a Souls-like.
Wow. Well, listen, the creativity in that team is unbelievable. So you can't say
turn-based.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably post about it later, but yeah, he said he wants to make a JRPG.
I would love to see that.
I think it would be amazing.
So would I.
His take on it, yeah.
But he also said famously that his ultimate fantasy game is close to Elden Ring, but not exactly there. It's on the same track as Elden Ring, but it's not his dream fantasy game. So we'll see.
I'll tell you, man. Elden Ring really is something special for you guys out there in the chat or listening later. And you say, "Listen, Mooch, you guys can sit in there and talk to your blue in the face. I'm not a Souls fan. That's just not what I like to play." Elden Ring really is truly something special. It's one of those games that when you go into next generation and everyone talks about this generation, Elden Ring will be in, I would say, probably 95% of conversations. It really is something unique. It's special. It does take the Souls genre, the linear aspects, which, I've said this on my streams, and to a certain degree, I still actually do, like a Dark Souls 3 linearity, the way that game kind of plays out. I think I still hang my hat on that versus the open world. But as you play Elden Ring more and more and more, the massive world that it is, it's just like anything else. It gets more comfortable. And what they created was something very special. So this is going to be a great weekend for a lot of people that are enjoying that. And if it's something you don't dig, that you don't dig it. But if you get a chance to play Elden Ring, just the original campaign, I do recommend it. That being said, I can already hear Kami getting very, very antsy to play the game. And I told him we'd be out of here 20 minutes ago. And the only way you can get Kami back on here is you got to keep your word. So, honestly, Kami, I'm from New York and I'm Italian. We're always late. So the 20 minutes is like a buffer in soccer. Okay, it's like the game was over, but we got injury time, so we got to go to the.
It's all good. Don't worry about it, man.
All right, I appreciate that. Guys, please do hit that like button before you guys leave. Outstanding chat tonight. I know that this week wasn't a lot of insane gaming news, but there was definitely some stuff to talk about, and the Elden Ring hype is definitely there. We are going to be enjoying a stream tomorrow. I want Kami to talk about his stream tomorrow, but guys, go over to twitch.tv, Mooch TV, drop deals for zeros, M00CHTV. We're going to be over on Twitch tomorrow. I do want to say this much. Shout out to Khalib Pratt, who has subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much. Rob Jones says, what's up, Mooch panel and chat? Hope you're all good. Right back at you, Rob Jones. And the Claymore says, Miyazaki also said FromSoftware would never have mass layoffs as long as he's in charge. Absolute legend. Shout out to the Claymores. And, that's what it's all about.
Shit.
You make a good product, people will buy it. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care if it's a good pasta dish, a great pizza, a phenomenal game, a great gaming system, TV. It doesn't matter. You make it great, people will buy it. Please, guys, like I said, hit that like button, subscribe. I'm going to go in reverse order and say shout out to the great Slow-Mo Backslap. Slow-Mo, first of all, let me say thanks for being here tonight. Second of all, to go from podcast to podcast takes a true professional. I've done it probably a half dozen times. It's exhausting, so I want to say thank you for that. Please, guys, go over and check out DPS Podcast as soon as you're done with this show. But Slow-Mo, let people know where they can find you. And thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, no problem at all. Awesome panel, awesome chat. Singer being singer as usual.
Yes,
I love it.
I love it. I do too.
What's that supposed to mean, Slow-Mo? What's that supposed to mean?
You know what it's supposed to mean. You know what it means, singer. But no, look, hey, all love the singer as well. Like, shout out to you guys. DPS Podcast, that's Damage Per Second Podcast. We had to do our show a little early tonight due to my co-host Forte's some personal things he had to take care of. So you can check that out on the Damage Per Second Podcast channel. We had a great show. Shout out to Ramon Terrell who joined us, and also you can check me out with Singer saying more odd things on Scumcast this Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the Asher Luca. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, shout out to Slow-Mo for that. And actually, I'll go right to that Singer. Shout out to Gamer Persona. Shout out to Singer. Absolutely. You guys are great. I love it when we always have somebody has a great point to make. I say, get on the show. So a person's like, Mooch, I got to get on the show. Get on the show. Him and Singer going back and forth. Outstanding. It's what CrossFire is built on. But Singer, I got to tell you, the more and more we get the podcast together, really do love having you on the show, man. You bring a great perspective. You bring a completely different train of thought, especially from the PC side, which I appreciate. Singer, let everybody know where they can find you. And as always, thanks for being here tonight.
Oh, fantastic show. Shout out to Persona coming through. I mean, I've had a feeling it may happen, and it was like, I got the point across, and it was respectful. So, awesome. Shout out to the panel. Shout out to Old Man Slow-Mo with his broken ankles.
So, why you gotta be all the slander? Like I didn't slander you, sir. I just said you had an odd take, and you gotta talk about my ankles, call me old and stuff. It's just very petty.
That's what we want to know. Ankles or kinkles?
Yeah, shout out to Mooch. Thanks for the invite again. As you know, I'm always down. And as Slow-Mo said, you can find me Saturdays on the Asher Lucas channel, 7 p.m. Eastern. Jamming out with the people. So tune in. Be a great time.
Absolutely. Shout out to Singer and shout out to the great Ash and Luca, guys. Go over and check out Scumcast on Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. The Wise Old Gamer, Wise also, me and Wise were just talking as the show was starting. He goes, I got to get on the show. I got to get on here. I said, no time like the present. Wise, get over here. I've known Wise for a very long time. Really great guy in the community. Always very gracious. Helps a lot of people behind the scenes that you guys don't know about. Wise, as I said to you before you were on the show, I'll say it on the air. You're always welcome here, buddy. This is your second home. You can always come over when you want. So, Wise, let people know where they can find you. Let people know about that phenomenal show you have on Friday nights. And I can't wait for you to return on the show as well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on in such short notice. But yeah, this is an honor. As I said to you before, 3 years ago, I used to watch your show on TV or on YouTube, and I was like, you know what? that would be the dream one day to be able to do what Mooch does. And
Thank you.
Definitely not to the level that you do it, because you're one of the OGs in the game, and I have to salute where salute is. And to quote Wayne Campbell from Wayne's World, "I'm not worthy. We're not worthy. We're not worthy." But
Lies, you're great.
But yeah, you can find me Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, Wise Old Gamer with a Z. Also on the Twitters. I do a podcast every Friday night. It's a roundtable podcast, about 8 or 9 people. It just changes in and out. We have different guests coming in. The motif is a little bit different. It's not like one console centric. It's all consoles and PC, and it's just a bunch of guys getting together, guys and gals getting together after a week's worth of BS and just drinking and shooting the shit, and that's just what it is. We just start with some random topics, and wherever the night goes, it goes, right? So sometimes we start talking about, I don't know, games, and we end up talking about changing diapers. So it's fluid, and I like it that way. But yeah, it's every Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. And I've also started a new podcast called You Can't Say That Online, just my candid thoughts. Obviously, when I'm doing a podcast with 8 or 10 plus people, and Mooch, you probably know this, as the host, you don't get sometimes a chance to get in a word edgewise. So, and fair enough, right? Because you want your panelists to shine, right? Or your guests to shine, right?
Absolutely. I always say the panel is the star of the show. It's not me. It's this panel, because when you bring great people together in the community and there's great discussion, debates, and listen, the best part of it is not having the same opinion. And like you say,
that's the best part.
It is. It really is. It's what makes it for a great conversation. So I agree with you, Wise. So what is the new show? What did you call it?
You can't say that online. Like, I don't know if you guys remember. Some of you guys
can't say that on television.
You can't do that on TV.
You can't do that
on television on Nickelodeon.
Yeah, with
the little slime and stuff.
The green slime. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a take on that. Basically, my candid thoughts. What I really feel. I might have a couple of guests on there, 1 or 2, just to say a couple of things and just go and debate. Because I think, like as you said, Mooch, it's boring watching a whole panel full of yes men, or yes women, or whatever you want to call it. You want to stir the pot. You want to say stuff
Absolutely.
that, that's how you find out what the other side thinks. You get a perspective,
Absolutely.
If the only perspective is the one that then you're not really learning anything in the process. So,
Agreed.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you for the inspiration, and thank you for having me on, and it would be a pleasure to be on anytime you want me. So yeah.
I appreciate that.
Check out my show, 6 p.m. Eastern.
Absolutely. Great to have you on, Wise. And now that I'm on Thursdays, your availability will open up now, because we were doing it at the same time before, which was very, very difficult. So great to have you on tonight, Wise. And last but certainly not least, Kami, great to have you on here, guys. It's at OKAMI13_. Go over and follow him, will you, on X? Because if you don't know what's going on in gaming, Kami's going to make sure you do real soon. Kami, thanks for being here tonight, buddy. I love the work that you do. You keep a lot of us informed. A lot of people that podcast, follow you, because why not? You have outstanding news, late breaking news. You keep a lot of us informed, and I want to say thank you for that. We all do appreciate it. Kami, let people know they can find you, and I hope, boy, I tell you, 30 minutes over what I promised you. I can't wait till you're back on CrossFire again, Kami.
Much love, man. I'm always happy to come on. Great show today. Like you said, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Okami13 for the latest gaming news 24/7, 365. And I will be streaming on Twitch starting tomorrow with the Elden Ring DLC, and that is twitch.tv/KingKamiTV. So come on over, hit that follow button, come on over to Twitter, get your gaming news. And thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. Guys, let me reiterate that. So Kami's going to be streaming. I'm going to try to do something with Kami this weekend. If we don't get to this weekend, we will in the future. That's King Kami TV, and it's Mooch TV. Okay, so that's M00CHTV.
I'll help you with Moog.
Listen, that's not a. I'm going to listen. As they always say, I've got to earn my wings here. So I'm actually going to try it, Kami. I think I can do this. But if I can't, hey, you know what that makes for? Better streaming, better TV. So they'll get to enjoy that focus too. Guys, it's going to be a great show next Thursday as well. 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube. But please, again, guys, I love it. It really, really warms the heart when I shut down this show and I look at my phone. It's like these 5, these 7, these 10 people just followed you over on Twitch. So follow us right here and follow us over on Twitch as well. It's going to be an outstanding Elden Ring weekend. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. A lot of super guest stars coming on, and it'll be a lot of me raging. It'll be fantastic. That being said, on the way out, please hit that like button. We'll see you next week. Until then, please go play some games. Enjoy yourself. Talk to you soon. Peace out.